The Administration and Finance Committee meeting for Tuesday, March 10th will be called to order at 9:08 p.m. We've already had the moment of silent meditation. We've already had the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Manager, may I please have a roll call?
Yes, sir. Vice Mayor Omar Nickerson, chairperson.
Here.
Vamari Roman, vice chairperson. Councilperson
Here.
Vamari Roman. Okay. Councilperson Andres Urban, member.
Present.
All members are present. You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I know that Councilperson Roman, you want to add something to the agenda. I'll have you add that first, and then we'll do approval of the agenda.
Yes, thank you so much. I'd like to add 2 ordinances for possible village charter changes, revisions to discuss.
All right. So let's do this. Let's add those. Do you want those to come like early or later in the meeting?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I mean, I'm gonna be brief. I just wanna go over them, and then, because our next election is in November,
Yeah.
I do believe that if the committee agrees to pass these, then
We have to get it going.
we need to get it going, yeah.
All right. So let's do this. Let's put it. You want to put it? Let's put it in between G3 and G4. Is that good for you?
It's fine.
All right. So we'll make it G4 and G5, and then we'll move everything else down.
Perfect. And here I have copies for, sorry, Mayor, I didn't think you were gonna be here. Let me make a copy.
Do you have the name? What you want to name them? So we have that. G4 would be.
Do we make them? Huh? Charter amendments, Yeah.
Both charter amendments?
yeah.
Okay, so do you want to name it charter amendment?
Okay, one would be, if I may?
Of course.
One would be a charter amendment concerning vacancies.
Charter amendment
And
vacancy.
the other would be a charter amendment concerning staggering council terms.
Stagger. Thank you very much. With the 2 additions, do I have a motion to approve the agenda, or Councilperson Urban, is there anything you want to add or delete to the agenda before we do that? I wanted to ask you that first. Okay, with that being said, do I have a motion to approve the agenda with the 2 additions?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Thank you very much. So we have approval agenda. I mean, we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed, say no. Thank you very much. What about the minutes, you guys? Has anybody had a chance to read over the administration and finance
Yes.
minutes from last time? I read over them also. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
A motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Thank you very much. Good and welfare. Before I go out there, Madam Mayor, is there anything that you wanted to say for good and welfare?
I'm not on the committee, and I just wanted to, I saw the agenda items, and there's a couple of comments that I want to make on some of them before I go. First and foremost, I looked at the planning and zoning meeting additional cost. The email that we got is not entirely accurate. What we need to determine is we're only adding 4 additional planning and zoning meetings. So there must have been a cost because they're already on January, March, May. So what is the difference in the savings now that night is 3 instead of 2? So I know that the clerk sent us, it was 4,000 and change, but that's not entirely accurate. And that's where I wanted to ask, I didn't know who would be best, and you all can determine that. So I think we were all on copy of the email, but I didn't want you all to think that adding a P&Z every month, that there was actually over $4,000, because it's not. Keep in mind that planning and zoning was already January, March, May, and then July. So technically, we added February, April, and June, and maybe if we have in August. So we added a total of 4 meetings. So the question I would have for the CFO is, when P and Z was on the third Tuesday, is the cost different now because you only have 2 instead of 3 meetings? And then if there is, what is the savings? And then you can really determine what the actual cost is for adding it. So that's not, I wanted to put that on the record because it's not entirely correct. Let's see, the other thing is, also with P and Z, I asked for the budget, and the other thing I wanted to just remind the committee and the administration is, are we still getting those recovery fees? I know that Juan puts recovery fees on the invoices, and we're supposed to be billing it back to the client. So I want to be sure that with the change of Miriam and with the change that we've had over at, I apologize, his name is Christopher? Christian, that they're looking at the invoices and they're making sure that when you see Juan puts recovery fees, that we're getting that money back because it'll offset our P and Z budget as well. So recovery fees for the committee. The newsletter mailing out cost. I don't know if you all got the amount on that, but keep in mind that we as a village, because we're the entity that would be sending it out, we have to go to the post office and I get a bulk permit. So there's a process to that. So definitely something you may want to start considering for the end of the year, but you will have to get a permit for that. And I don't know if the village has that. I don't think we do, right? No. And then I asked for a copy of the RFP. Yesterday when I took a look at this, I just mentioned to the committee, you all will decide what's best. You are the committee. But when I looked at the RFQ, I don't know where it came from, but I know that it came from a village or a town of a population much greater than ours. So I just say, just keep in mind all of that and make sure it gets cleaned up, because it's definitely don't, that RFQ from what I read yesterday and today, it's nowhere near in the final format. So I hope the committee looks at that. And that's the RFP for legal services for the village. And then the last thing I had was, enterprise. I'm really excited that you all could potentially be working something out. Christina and I met Jesus at the Miami-Dade League of Cities. So I'm really, I think that this, I tell the Admin and Finance Committee, I think that if we move in this direction, I think it's going to be a huge savings in the long run to all of us. So I think that's very exciting. And that was it. That's my only comments about PNC. Good luck. You all have a wonderful evening. Don't stay here too late. And see you all next week. That concludes my comments, yes. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, of course, anytime. We'll get to the additional costs of the planning and zoning meetings. I think what we need to find out, Madam Mayor, you brought up a good point. I think what we need to find out is, so when they're here, is it that there's a cost for just when they come out, like a blanket cost, or is it a cost for each additional meeting that they cut it off? Because that makes a difference, like from what the mayor said. Because if there's a cost for just coming out for an extra time, otherwise, opposed to if there's a cost, like when we had the planning and zoning meeting just now, and then that cost is cut, and now there's a new cost for the administration and finance meeting, we have to find that out, because that makes that will bring us a lot of clarity. So, thank you, Madam Mayor.
I think it was over 5
No, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right. Anybody else for good and welfare? Hearing none. So we're going to move right on. The first thing we're going to have is the CFO report. So we're going to get a report. How you doing, my brother? What's going on? Good to see you.
Thank you, Chris Wallace, CFO for the interim CFO for the village. Sorry, I was making a note to follow up on those items that you had just discussed, and I didn't want to forget to do that. Before the committee meeting met, I just distributed the budget report as of February 29th. So if you have any questions on that, I know you just got it, but the synopsis is, much like the last meeting, you look like you're pretty much on plan. Mm-hmm. We're still getting caught up from the changes in personnel, so We've been making some adjustments to last fiscal year and to this fiscal year as we come across them. But I don't see anything of particular note other than those, that one big issue, the loan payment coming due in July, at the end of July. But we'll be dealing with that, I'm sure, in the very near future. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any of your questions.
Yeah, I know we're going to get to the public affairs budget update, and we'll get to that. But I just wanted to clarify, because when we had our meeting, we were discussing to Councilperson Roman's love that we will be, from now on, be able to separate when we do events, donations that come in against the cost of events, because remember you were explaining to me and the manager when we had our meeting that it just needs to be coded.
Right.
Just that code needs to be in that certain way, which is something that's pretty easy that probably should have
Well,
been.
it's easy in concept. It can be overlooked in execution, much like you were just talking about cost recovery accounts. That's the exact same thing. It requires someone to know that it's a cost recovery and to code it, and then the person who enters it into the accounting system must also see that code in the account. Now, that should be an easy thing for the village, because your accounting system, the codes are an appendage to the account code. So I will follow up on the cost accounting, but you will be able to show the revenues and the expenses to a project, as they're called.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I've been correcting is, and this just go off on a little bit of an accounting tangent, it's commonplace for us to see people come in and post revenues and expenses into the same account, thereby netting them off. And you really can't do that. You have to put the revenues in the revenues and the expenses in the expenses. So, and your system will keep track of that. If that works well and everyone does what they're supposed to do, you can run a report for a project, which has no regard for a fiscal year. You can just pick a period of time and say, what were my revenues that came in and what were my expenses? And a project can also have a budget. Now, your accounting system also rolls up projects into they're like sub-accounts into major accounts. So it's very versatile. The important thing is to know beforehand that you want have a particular need to do that. I like project accounting because it affords, it doesn't mess up your chart of accounts. Every once in a while, someone has a particular thing that's very important to them. In the scheme of the accounting system, it's not that big a deal. So project accounting allows us to provide the kind of reporting I think you're after, both the money that comes in and the expenses that goes out.
I appreciate that. When we had that meeting, that was wonderful to hear that. I made sure I brought that up. Councilperson Roman, do you have any questions about that or anything that you want to ask me about that?
So are we able to set up, the annual events that we already have, that we know that have been happening for many years, so that it has the project accounting? And that way, whenever we move forward with
Well-
our permanent, it stays that way and we can,
Well, yeah, and yes is the short answer. And your public affairs budget is a classic example of
Right.
that. You have a number of things. It's important that when you budget for them that you do that. Now, one thing, project accounting, one advantage of that is, let's say you have something that overlaps the fiscal year. You don't have to worry about that with project accounting because it's just going to go in there and accumulate forever. It's also not dual entry accounting. So there's no offset. It doesn't have a balance sheet. It just has revenues and expenses that go into it. So I always tell people, because there's the potential for people to overlook the coding of it, both at the initial coding of the document and the entering into the system, it's usually the minimum amount of transactions that you would see in there. So you have to keep in the back of your mind someone may have overlooked something. And usually someone like yourself would come to me and say, we had this check of $500 and it didn't get coded to that. And I'm like, got overlooked, we'll correct it. So, but that's why you also have reporting, so you can see most of the time you might be aware of that, or honestly, I may not be aware of it. So it's incumbent upon all of us to follow it, but your system allows it, and we'll make sure we'll follow up on this cost recovery to make sure it's being done.
okay. And then who's currently doing, who's assisting the CBA? Is there anyone on staff that's, like we
Yes,
used to have it before?
No, we have a gentleman named Christian Abril. After Tony Cisneros left, about 2 months ago, Christian was hired, so he's now being trained.
He's being trained too?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Councilperson Roman, before I go to Councilperson Roman, anything else about the budget itself that you have questions about for him?
Just one question.
Go ahead.
So the coding would be done by Christian or whomever you're training? Who does that coding?
Well, Christian's new, so it's really incumbent upon everyone who gets invoices and bills, the manager principally, to be honest with you, in this organization. But we'll have to train Christian to be aware of it and
So
cognizant
that
of it.
has to be done here at the village, not by our CPA firm or whomever?
Yeah, it's something that you would do as documents come in, bills, checks, or
Got it,
whatever.
okay.
Someone needs to know, like, this is, and cost recovery, I'm gonna go out on a limb saying it's probably not being done the best way it can be, because you need to set up a cost recovery for every project that has a cost recovery. So you'll be able to invoice who's ever supposed to be paying for the cost recovery account. And I don't know if you require them to put a deposit down. Say, a lot of times the city will say, give me $5,000, and then when that depletes, we'll bill you for for more as those costs go up. So I'll follow up on that. I'm really familiar with cost recovery activities.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilperson Roman, do you have any other questions about the
No.
budget as a whole? Councilperson Erbaum, anything you want to say?
Good evening. Thank you for bearing with us here. I do not have an accounting background. It makes it even worse. I have, in fact, have ADHD. As I'm looking through here, is it a reasonable guideline that as I look through line items, 41.7% is because that is how much of our fiscal year has passed. So therefore, it would be logical to think that most line items would be at 41.7% because that's where we are within the fiscal.
It would be a
year.
guideline, like
Right.
salaries and things, you would tend to think they would be proportionate.
Okay.
But some things come up, once or twice during the year, and,
Sure. Would there be anything at the top of your mind in terms of outliers that are not explained by, that might give you concern or that you would like to
There
share?
are some variances, and the manager's aware of them, like maintenance on vehicles is,
Right.
One of those things.
Sure.
I never really have heartache with variances because they tend to either point to a problem or a bonus, because it can work to your benefit sometimes. But they're just things you have to deal with. I'm not intimate with your operations as I would be with an organization where I've been for some time.
Okay.
But I'm getting close to that, so I'm comfortable that, other than the things that the manager's aware of, there's not a whole lot that has gone south at this point. But you are running on a tight budget.
Yes.
So it wouldn't take much for it to go south.
Sure.
And once again, we do have that, big elephant in the room that we're gonna have to deal with in the form of the loan payment and the FEMA reimbursements. They go hand in hand.
Correct. Okay. Thank you sincerely.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Madam Manager, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, I don't.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Attorney, anything that you want to say?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so about the budget, any questions about the budget? Anybody from the audience want to come up and say anything? All right, moving on to the next agenda item. This is about the Enterprise Leasing Fleet Management Program. This is about Enterprise coming in order to deal with what we have to deal with our police cars, our code enforcement vehicle, our public works vehicle. Madam Manager, if you want to go ahead and take it away.
I can introduce it for sure. Thank you,
Thank
Vice
you.
Mayor Nickerson. Yes, we have Enterprise Leasing here with us, as well as our Lieutenant Alex Mendez, who has been intimately involved in this whole process of trying to understand the leasing program that we really want to consider here. We've had a lot of issues with old vehicles, and even the ones that were donated to the village have pretty much, there's so much work needed to those vehicles that we've exceeded our maintenance line item in the public safety budget. So we really need to look at other options, and the enterprise leasing program gave us an opportunity to have, and it's something that's utilized in other municipalities, other jurisdictions, police departments. It's a way to always have new vehicles on the road. We don't want police officers, and even our code enforcement vehicle on the side of the road not functioning. Our officers need the best equipment that they can have so that they are able to execute their work. So we've met with Jesus, who's here, Granadillo, who's here tonight, met with him on a number of occasions and gone through different numbers, worked with our interim CFO, Wallace, to see what we can come up with. They put together a little schematic for you to review, as has our interim CFO, Wallace. I'm not sure if we have the copies out, but I'll make sure we get that for you in terms of CFO Wallace's breakdown, so that you can just have a view on what everything will cost in terms. No, let me get you that. So I'll ask Lieutenant Mendez to kind of come up and talk about the fleet and just where we're at and what we need, what our needs are.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Alejandro Mendez, and with regard to our police fleet, we're expressing our need, our actual need for, what we're asking for is 8 vehicles at this time. If you had a glance at what's parked outside, with the best of intentions, we were donated 5 vehicles from Homestead. Only one of those was registered, and even that one is failing to service the way we need it to. In addition to that, the 2 we got from Doral, one of them I'm driving, and the other one is parked, has electrical issues, and that's considering we've already invested money in these cars. The ones I was cautious about was Homestead. We put batteries in them to run them, and that was pretty much the gist of it, because we knew we were gonna hemorrhage even more money there. Unfortunately, with regard to everything else, we have about 13 cars that are dating between 2006 to 2010, and they're well beyond their service years. They're not dependable. The officers have been very good to be driving them while on patrol, but to say they're lacking and need service is pretty much status quo is my best explanation with regard to that. We need dependable vehicles. The officers would feel appreciated, would be better appreciated. We're competing for bodies, for reserve officers with other agencies that are at this point are well beyond us. And they're at the point where they got brand new vehicles and they're giving take-home vehicles to reserve officers to at least have a fleet here, a solid fleet that we know is gonna work and is gonna transition for the next 5 years, and a plan to keep us from ever being in this boat again, and not even close.
May I also
Yeah.
add, we do have a vehicle graveyard out here again.
Yes.
We have to get rid of these vehicles. So I know that Enterprise has an opportunity for us with those vehicles that we can't utilize, but I think it's important to look at it. I know that the department needs 8 vehicles. It's unbudgeted, and we are looking at the loan issue regarding our FEMA reimbursement. But even if we consider a phasing in 2 at a time, or 4 for the police this fiscal year and 4 in the next, or something in that nature, but we also really have to replace the code enforcement vehicle as well as the public works truck. Okay, thank you. And I'm gonna pass out just our CFO's breakdown of what the initial costs will be for us to get this plan started.
Thank you. I remember when we had our meeting, Madam Manager and CFO, I remember I asked about and I don't know if you guys were able to do it or not, but remember when we had our meeting, I asked about how much, like the comparison, because I asked about, I'm thinking like maybe you guys didn't get a chance to do it, but I asked about how much do we spend, in repairs in a year, so I can compare that to how much it would be for this program. Like how much do we spend in a year? How much do we spend in a year for repairs for the public works vehicle, for the code enforcement vehicle, and how much do we spend a year pretty much per police vehicle?
No, I don't have those numbers yet. I know we met last week and we just haven't had
It's-
an
it's-
opportunity, but
yeah,
I will
but
get
if-
those
if we
numbers.
can get that, yeah.
I will.
That's going to be big about, you know, how I make this decision.
I
You know,
understand.
if one cost on one side is so much different than the other side, then that makes a big difference to me. Lieutenant, I hear you, I understand, and I agree with you, man. I think, you know, our police officer safety, you know, I mean, the police department is our largest budget. Public safety is also our most important, because without public safety, and without public safety with individuals who work public safety that have a high morale, that makes a huge difference.
It's incredibly
It
important.
makes a huge difference.
We were courting a couple guys from the city, and
Yeah.
they were taken from us. And when they were cordial with me, they were polite and saying, "Look, this is the scenario here." And the guys that came from the other side, you know, small departments
Yeah.
here in Miami-Dade, but they enticed them with newer cars, and one of them actually got a take-home car as a reserve officer, understanding that's not where we're going, but that's what we're competing against.
I understand.
And when you want to get quality people to come in, either as full-time, part-time, or reserve, you have to look at that. That's their office, that's what they're driving around. We're giving the transition 5 years, which is a good service for each vehicle. That's what's recommended by Enterprise as well. The 8 cars would allow us to transition the newer Tauruses to reserve vehicles. We would then drive the newer vehicles, and it gives us that life to include the fleet and to get rid of those 13 paperweights that are out there.
Councilperson Rowan, is there anything you want, questions, comments?
Can maybe the CFO go over what we have here?
So there are just 2 sections to this. The top part, what says Dodge Durango Plan A6, this is like the police department side. And it itemizes costs and terms and things of that nature. On the bottom is what I would call the administrative side for code enforcement and public works. There's 2 different types of vehicles there. So both of them both plans require a down payment of 10% of the vehicle. The patrol cars obviously cost in the neighborhood of $10,000 to equip, you know, with lights, bars, cages, that kind of thing. And they're also more expensive vehicles. So there's a first-year cost because you have a budget constraint this year. So for each vehicle that you would put out in the police department, that's about midway down the page. We estimate that would be about $21,087. And that would include equipping the vehicle, the down payment, and the lease payments that you would have, and some additional costs that would be one time. And then after that, you would be looking at about $9,000 a year per vehicle to operate it, to lease it and operate it. Keep in mind, leasing is just a financing tool. You also have some exposure, or it could be a plus. You just don't know how much the car is going to sell for at the end of the lease term. So you may have a payment due then, or you may actually be ahead of the game on an open-end lease. The leasing also includes only 10,000 miles a year, so we've added in estimating 15,000 miles in the extra mileage for that. Those terms are negotiable with the leasing company as well. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. The annual cost for the Ford Fusion, which would be the code enforcement car, is $4,521, $4,600 for the current year. And for the Sierra, which would be the public works vehicle, it's roughly $5,500 a year. And roughly for those 2 cars, $10,000 a year. So these would be additional fixed costs in your budget that you don't have currently. Your fleet is deplorable. nothing new, not telling you anything or bad-mouthing you, it's just old. And I suspect the reason it's like that is because your finances are fairly limited. But employees need vehicles to do their jobs, and when they're down, there's a hidden cost of them not being able to do their jobs. So you have to keep that in mind too. The downtime of a fleet is a quantifiable cost. It usually requires you to have, if you have a lot of downtime, you tend to see a lot more reserve or backup vehicles that are also in extremely poor condition. It's a pretty common phenomenon with cities' fleets. You really need to have a mechanism where these things are constantly replaced. But that comes at a cost of adding a fixed cost to your budget, but that's an important fixed cost to have.
Excellent, thank you. And so we don't have what we're currently, because that's what you were asking
That's what I-
for.
yeah.
Okay.
But we'll get that as soon as we can to you all this week.
Yeah, I actually did start working on it. Like in the budget backup, you'll notice that the police department as a project code actually has vehicles that they code as a project. So they tend to code those maintenance bills to those vehicles. I don't think we have that luxury with the other vehicles, so I'll be working with the team to try to identify what those costs are.
Councilperson Roman, you have anything else? Councilperson Urban?
Lieutenant, you might be able to help me out with this question, Manager. So, in terms of the mileage, the 10,000 a year, accounting for possibly 15,000, I'm just curious to know, I feel like we should be able to, for example, track mileage throughout the year, and even if you, like with the take-home program, right?
Correct.
If someone's racking up miles on one car, at some point, we have the capacity, I would hope, to switch them out to someone who's racking up fewer miles on a car,
Correct.
and we feel confident.
That's the benefit to
And we
having
and we
those
feel
vehicles.
confident that we could track that successfully.
Completely, because that's part of the enterprise.
Can you,
Okay, so as they're doing
Yeah,
okay,
but-
so you're gonna tell me that as you're doing maintenance, you guys will be kind of giving us yeah.
Well, actually, I can answer the question.
If just say your name for the record.
Oh, my name is Jesus Granadillo, and I work for Enterprise Fleet Management. Do I need to get my address? 1781 Southeast 4th Street in Pompano Beach. In regards to the mileage on the open-end leases, there's unlimited miles, so there's no charge for any miles. We just use that in order for us to depreciate the vehicle the right way.
Okay.
It's just a guidance or a benchmark, and we came up with 10,000 miles based on the list of vehicles that was provided to us and the miles. Given the model year, we kind of determine that way approximately how many miles you drive. Now, if you drive 15 or you drive 20, you can either get creative and modify it or switch vehicles with other individuals. But at the end, the only thing that is going to be affected whether you drive more miles is how much we're going to get
Equity
for the
in turn.
vehicle when we sell it at the end.
Very good. Okay, that helps clear up quite a bit. All right, and then Lieutenant, in your opinion, if we can manage 2 vehicles for this fiscal year, are we still so sorely inadequate in that effort? Is it worth our effort to attempt 2, or is it only worth our effort to go beyond 2 vehicles for this fiscal year, meaning through September?
Frankly, beyond, because
Yeah, frankly, is good.
what happens is you're still gonna be hemorrhaging money
Yep.
on these other vehicles.
Okay.
And what we're at a loss at is that we
Sure.
will spend $1,300 on a vehicle, we think it's fine, and a month later, you're spending another $800 because another issue came up.
Okay.
And then there's a noise, and if an officer tells me the brakes are making noise, I gotta check those
Yep.
brakes. I can't just let them go on. And a big issue also is the emergency equipment stops working. The cars were donated, we gotta take it to a different vendor. Even the newer cars, they were done with a vendor that is no longer in business.
Okay.
So we're out that, and as soon as you go to specialty parts to replace the siren, it costs us $800.
Sure. Okay. I might have one more question for you if I could. And I'm sure you guys have gone over all these details, so I'm sorry if we're rehashing things. But in terms of other law enforcement fleets that Enterprise would be servicing, could you speak to that a little bit? So,
We actually, in the state of Florida alone, we're about 100 entities that we're working with.
Okay.
Locally, in the Tri-County area, about 32 to 35 municipalities. Within your size, or we work with Village of Eastgate Park.
Okay.
We work with Miami Gardens, which is a lot bigger. We work with North Bay Village, Cutler Bay. We work with, I'm trying to think, Pinecrest, Sweetwater.
You
So
got
there's plenty of examples that we can,
Fantastic.
references that we can provide.
All right, thank you very much. And then I might have one more question for if I could just, and then you might actually, Ms. Manager, be able to help me out with this also. In terms of imaginative financing for the crisis we find ourselves in, what are the options here that we really would be looking at outside of? I mean, I know the straight answer would be you'd be talking like an additional loan, but in terms of really truly, what would our options be here? I know you guys have exhausted I have no doubt you guys have exhausted all possibilities, but just for my benefit, walking in late to the game here.
Your options are you buy them and then you contract for maintenance. This lease comes with a maintenance component, which is a contract for maintenance. To buy them, you would be looking at financing them yourselves and procuring them yourselves. So you would more than likely piggyback the sheriff's bid, that the statewide sheriffs have, or some other local bid that's already been bid out for police cars. Then you'd have to, manage them and get them outfitted and equipped, much like you're doing with these cars. And then you have to maintain them. So you don't have your own fleet operation, nor would that be recommended for a fleet this size. So you would, outsource your maintenance operations. Your gas is your gas, you get that from Miami-Dade County. So, that's gonna be constant no matter how you run the operation.
Okay.
So you're really talking about the financing component to the cars, how long you keep the cars. With the leasing, you're more or less forced to replace your fleet. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you lack the discipline to finance the cars yourselves and, have that as a continual thing, then, you're gonna lose sight of the fact that your fleet is being aged.
Sure.
And you really need the underlying problem that you have is you don't have in your budget a construct to manage your fleet. It's basically, I'll do what I can, when I have the money to do it. And so consequently, you get donated vehicles, you run vehicles into the ground. You have more vehicles than you probably need because you have more spares than you would probably ordinarily require for your downtime. So, leasing, like I said before, is a financing tool. The acquisition, you may or may not do as well based upon Enterprise's purchasing power versus how you would go about, buying a car at any particular point in time. It's hard to know because at any point in time, you can have a good deal over there.
Sure.
And you may not be aware of it. So piggybacking doesn't always give you the best price at any point in time. Manufacturers' rebates will inure to the benefit of the lessor, and you won't necessarily know what those are unless you do some research. So, but it takes time for you to bid and do all that. So those are your options.
Okay.
Okay. Also, I want to add to that Enterprise did say that they would buy these disabled vehicles,
That was
right?
that was
Or
gonna be
was
my next
that
question. Do we?
an opportunity? I know it won't
He's-
cover all the
he's
costs,
like,
but it's
"Well,
something that was an added bonus.
We will sell the vehicles on your behalf. We'll help you dispose of
Okay.
them, and
Okay.
then utilize the equity from them
Sure.
towards as a credit, or you can either get a check for it, or you can use it as a credit towards the new vehicles.
Have we done any sort of analysis at all on the disabled vehicles, and then whichever would be the first as far as the operating vehicles to go?
We provided an equity analysis on those vehicles based on the miles
Okay.
and conditions of them.
Okay. Yeah, do we know how
Oh,
far
well, we, based on the whole fleet, we come up with, conservatively speaking, about $100,000 in equity in the whole fleet.
Okay.
Now, obviously, that's if you were to sell all of them, but I understand that a lot of them are still useful. So if we were to sell, let's say, half of them, we can use that, the proceeds from that into the new one. Now, these are estimated based on the make, model, and miles on the vehicles.
Okay.
Our remarketing department that provided us these numbers have not come and taken a look at them. So they probably base it very conservatively. Obviously, when we go and sell it in your behalf, we're gonna try to maximize that equity and get as much as we can.
Okay.
Doing it through secondary markets, the auction. We leverage the relationship that we have with dealership, with auctions, to try to maximize that equity for you guys.
Okay.
Okay. Why are we looking at the Dodge Durango? Is there not a less expensive vehicle?
If you want to factory order police rated vehicles right now, the only ones available are the Durangos or the Explorers, and the Explorers are a higher price. Other than that, you have to wait until the 2021 model year opens, so that way we can order the new vehicles.
Okay, so this is the 2020 models.
Those are 2020.
That are currently open, if we wanted to start with them now.
Correct.
Otherwise,
Right now
we
we
would
can
have
only
to wait until 2021.
well until the model
The
year
models come
2021
out.
opens, which is about summertime.
Right.
And by the time you order those vehicles, the delivery date normally is about 3 months later, 3 to 4 months later. So we can wait until the summer and order 2021s. Now, at that point, you'll be able to order police rated will be a Charger, could be a Fusion, it could be a Durango, a Tahoe, an Explorer. Those are the options. But as of right now, for the 2020 model year, the only ones that are available for ordering are the Durangos and the Explorers. We picked the Durango because they're more cost effective for you guys.
And off the top of your head, I don't know if you know what the differences in pricing would be for, let's say, a Charger.
The Charger is probably going to be a couple $1,000s less. I cannot give you an exact amount on top of my head, but it's going to be a little bit less than what the Durango is. This is a administrative sedan, so this is not the police rated unit, so it's not a good reference, but it's only a couple $1,000s less.
Per month? I mean, per year?
No, for the cost of the vehicle.
For the cost of the
The cost of the vehicle, yeah.
Okay.
price.
So what are we looking at per month, let's say, less?
You're talking on the Charger versus the Durango?
Well, I mean, I just picked a Charger, but so you have Fusions that are able to, what would be the least, a good vehicle, that would be a police vehicle, but would be, like for instance, they don't need a Durango. You know, our village is this small. So if we went with a smaller vehicle, I would like to know what the savings would be.
Well, there's definitely a saving part of it. Now, another things to consider for you guys is the flooding situation that you have in the village. And that's another things that we took in consideration, that we needed vehicles that were a little bit higher up. So that way, in the case that there was any kind of flooding, you would not have an issue driving a sedan versus a Durango. There's definitely, I would say, maybe $100 a month savings if you do a sedan versus an SUV. But when you talk about safety, when you talk about the circumstances within the village and the availability, that's the reason why we decided to go on the Durangos. If we could order the Chargers now, we would have included in the comparison. But we were kind of dealing with what we had at the moment.
I have a thought about that. Maybe if we stagger, or if we consider this program, maybe we look at something now, but then keep a Charger or a vehicle, a sedan for the next phase or the next wave, if we
I mean,
choose
we
that.
don't have a huge flooding problem right now. I mean, it is getting worse every year, but our flooding problems are not like other parts of Dade County. They've had those type of vehicles forever. So, that wouldn't be a huge concern, I would say, and if we had the money, granted, let's go with the SUVs, but, because of our situation, I would ask that we look for a more conservative approach to, the vehicles that we're selecting. And if we can stagger it, then that's what I would prefer to see.
Well, just to give you an example, for example, on the Chargers, this past year for the 2020 model year, the charges order banks did not open until beginning of October, and there was such a high demand for those vehicles that in 3 weeks they cut off the ordering process. So we only had a 3-week period when we could place orders for these vehicles. So we're expecting that for the 2021, something similar can happen. So we will not have an opportunity to place these orders until October of this year, which means, you'll be getting the vehicles around January, February of 2021.
So it sounds to me like we would need to create the 5-year rolling plan that the lieutenant is clearly saying is what's needed here, and then I think that would guide us to how to take the current fleet in its current status and begin to obviously we're not going to be able to just implement the plan throughout who knows, maybe we get an answer from FEMA in the next 2 months and we realize, hey, you know what, now we really can kind of take out another loan, which is probably what we would be looking at to go ahead and take care of that fleet, right? But without having resolution to that in this moment, it sounds clear that we just need to establish what that plan would be for a properly maintained fleet with anticipation of rolling vehicles out every 5 years, and then begin to take that frame and fill in the pieces as we replace vehicles here. And so I think without that overall plan, then we might be throwing bad after bad in terms of just trying to throw something together here. Anything, so I don't know. I feel like maybe the priority should be on, okay, what does our plan look like? And then now what are our options? But then what our options are now, what the budget allows for, obviously, or what the budget could allow for, I should say. And then by that time, I believe we would probably have numbers available for what the 21s would be, and be able to really kind of formulate a more very clear, concise plan of how to get us to where we need to be. And I think even just having that plan might be something that would benefit the morale of the officers, just knowing that we have a plan in place while we work on that. So using these numbers for the model year 20 Dodge Durango, let's say the Durango, right? The 2020 Durango. I agree. I know the Explorers are certainly more expensive than Durangos, and so within reason, we could use the numbers that you presented here for the 20 Durango, within reason to within a couple of $1,000s, be on target with what a 21 sedan is going to be, meaning like Fusion or Charger, right? And still be able to formulate a plan for what we want to do from fiscal year to fiscal year as new models become available.
Yeah, I can predict the pricing for the 2021.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't work for the
So we
manufacturers.
can still generate this plan without seeing the numbers of the 21s, knowing that we'll tweak the plan as the numbers become available.
We can easily, if you want to kind of do an estimation, just reduce the monthly payment by maybe $100 if it's a sedan instead of an SUV.
So I would say what we probably need here is an estimate for full fleet replacement with, so you got your 60-month initially, right? And then you're going to start to stagger those cars out. We're not going to replace the full fleet every 5 years. We're going to, right? So eventually we'll get to where all the cars will be within 5 years, but it's probably going to take us perhaps even 10, 12 years to get there, honestly. But at least if we could look at a 60-month followed by a 60, how does that look going out 10 to 12 years, honestly, and the estimated cost of that, and then you'd be able to each budget session be able to tweak it as the numbers come further into view. So year 12 is not going to, so at day 0 formulating that plan, looking at year 12, once we get closer to year 12, obviously it's going to look much different than it did back here at day 0, but at least we would have an understanding of a full estimate of what our need is in terms of monetary output, and then be able to have a more clear plan of how to get there, because I think it's very clear, and I think we're all in agreement that Lieutenant is absolutely correct, that we need to be in a place where this is, and the gentleman certainly is being very clear to us that this should be part of the budget, should be very clear and planned for, understood, this is what the cost is going to be, and then go from there. So I would encourage us to get an estimate on full fleet replacement. What does that look like? And then we would be able to start to kind of pick and choose pieces of where, what our options are to begin to get there in terms of a legitimate, replaceable fleet that is kind of accounted for and not ad hoc or crisis managed. And there you go. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Councilperson Urban, Councilperson Roman.
I think that's what we asked for last time, was just to find out what it was all going to cost. And then, figure out what we can do now versus wait till next year.
So in terms of, forgetting code enforcement and public works truck, just our law enforcement fleet, are we at 13? Is that what we're saying? Full fleet, are we at 13?
No, 13 will be what we get rid of as far as the cars that we need to get rid of.
So what's the?
We're looking at 8 right now, right?
Correct.
But let's say the Village of El Portal hits the Powerball, all right, and we are able to then update our fleet, our whole fleet from scratch. How many vehicles are we talking about?
8, because we still have 5. Remember, you weren't here, I know, Councilperson Urban, but we bought 5 vehicles 4 years ago.
Correct.
Those, and so they're still in good shape. However,
They're 4 years old.
they're 4 years old, and the warranty has just run out this month. So that said, we
That's why I'm
need
thinking
to
13.
they need to be, passed down to
So
a
8
place
critical,
for maybe reserves, and then
5
So
severe.
8 annually will be $71,237.12, based on what the CFO gave us, which is the $8,904.64 per
Okay.
vehicle.
yes.
Okay.
And that's not including the cost for the public works.
And so, am I incorrect in thinking that if we were not in limbo with FEMA resolution, that it would almost be a no-brainer to shop the best terms available and just get that loan and get our fleet up to date? Am I thinking incorrectly in that?
I think we have some other options to consider. We have impact being, incurred from development. I think that this would be an opportunity.
So for all vehicles, including the Sierra and the Fusion, if we stayed with the Durango, it's $81,428.37 a year.
For 8?
I'm sorry?
For how many? For 8?
For 8,
Yeah.
and the 2 for public works and public and
Okay.
code enforcement.
That includes those 2, okay.
So yeah, so we're looking at 81.5, let's say,
Okay.
First year.
the first year. And then it'll be a little bit less.
Well, it should be a lot less because it's just the monthly payment from that point on until the lease is up.
And then,
So then,
when is the first payment from to the Cavista? Okay.
where's the,
Because in terms of that development fee from the Cavista, for example, I am going to continue to be incredibly vocal that we maintain as much of a nut as possible out of that to be able to grow it, right? So that we could use that for a longer period of time, and even though we're tempted to burn it, I'm as guilty as anybody for burning cash in my pocket. So, however, and that's year one. We're talking. This is year one, right? And that would buy us some time, in theory, to work out within general revenues, where that would buy us some time to shift some things around within the general budget. Maybe we can't cover all of it for that next year, but at least we're not looking at the total output of,
so If it's the monthly payment for the police officers, then you're looking at $57,537.60 for just the police officers. And then whatever the monthly payment, I don't know what the monthly payment would be for the other two.
Lieutenant, one more question. So we're talking, we have 4 or 5 that are 4 years old? 5 that are 4 years old?
We have 5 that are 2017 models, correct?
Okay, all right. So they're not, we know that we're gonna need to replace them, but we're comfortable with, like,
Correct.
the officers feel good in those cars?
They're ours,
For now.
and we've maintained them,
Very
correct?
good. Okay.
There's no surprises.
All right, so then the of those 8 critical cars, is there a scale within those 8 in terms of, like, this one's gonna die tomorrow, the other one's gonna die a week from now? Are they all exactly on the same level? What in terms of
You mean with regard to the vehicles we have now?
the eight that are suffering and need desperately to be replaced?
Respectfully,
Yes.
they're on
please.
life support.
There we go. Every single one of them.
The one I'm driving,
Okay.
the one that I was driving,
Okay.
and the other officers. We even have an officer that had a 2010. An officer went like duty. He had a 2017, so I
Okay.
made him switch.
Okay.
So he's using that car so we don't
Right.
keep hemorrhaging money into
Gotcha.
the other vehicle he had. So we're trying everything the best way possible, and that's how we also came up with the 8 vehicles.
Okay.
That allows us to transition and have those spare vehicles that we know we've maintained, won't have surprises with. We transition and get rid of everything else. We stop hemorrhaging money on that end, and we're comfortable with the fleet that we have.
All right.
So,
That's
yeah,
it.
actually,
just
whatever
make a few
Enterprise
notes and then I'll
gave
be
us
back to the
before
microphone.
had the annual payments here, so for the 8 units, so it's 64,843. That's not including the 2 for the code enforcement and public works. So we're looking at roughly, I would say 75 per year.
Not 75,000 a year.
Well, so let's say 70, because if it's 64 or
Yeah.
65 for
Okay.
the 8 vehicles, you gotta add 2 more vehicles.
That's true.
So I would say 75, just to say 75.
Just be safe.
I mean,
Okay.
so if we're looking at 75 per year annually, where are we getting that money from? Where's that coming?
That's gonna be a deep dive into line items across every
Yeah.
single department.
It's $75,000. Where's that coming from?
Well, you don't have that kind of cushion in your current budget. Like I said earlier, I mean, the only real sources of revenue that you have, other than nickel and diming a couple of accounts, is your property tax. So either through the growth of the property tax base or the raising of the millage rate, those are the 2 things that generate more money, a higher millage rate or a higher tax base. Conversely, if your tax base decreases, that only leaves you one option, and you're already at a pretty high millage rate. But, I mean, cities that have a small tax base like yourself often find themselves in this predicament. So I don't know what to tell you. You have obligations, you have needs. They're not easy choices. None of you who sit up there have easy choices from week to week. So you have to go out into the community and look people in the face. I understand that. But it's easy for me to say that, you just raise your taxes or don't have cars, but that's really what it comes down to with just about everything you do. It's a choice between how you raise money and how you spend money. You don't have a lot of options in your community because of your tax base. Now, that's all not negative. I mean, you do have some growth that's about to happen. You had one earlier today that, could provide additional revenues. So you've got to keep that in the back of your mind too. Does that additional tax base that comes from development help you provide, this ability to do these things? I don't know, I'm familiar with the church redevelopment. I'm not familiar with the other one. I don't know what kind of revenues would be coming off of that or when it's going to be coming on board. There's a lag between when they start and by the time they actually get on the tax rolls. So you've got that going on, but taking the long-term view, when that stuff hits the tax rolls, that's a positive thing. And the more of that you have, and I spoke the last time to you, I think you do have redevelopment of existing residentials that will increase your tax base. That only really helps you, though, if the property churns. Current owners who sit on their property And I haven't evaluated your tax base, but what you're seeing in general terms are people staying in their homes longer. With Florida's homestead exemptions, that doesn't help you very much in a highly residential area because that growth that would incur, you're not being able to tax. So until they move, you're not gonna, when they do move, you see jumps from one house to the next. I usually deal with that a lot when people get their trim notices. It's like, hey, my neighbor, the person who owned the house before me only paid $3,000 and now I'm paying $8,000. It's like, yeah, well, they should have told you that when you bought it, but you know, that benefits the city obviously, but it doesn't really help the person who bought the house, and it really creates inequities in neighborhoods. I've lived in my house 35 years, and you know, I bought it when it was a lot cheaper than it's selling for now. My mortgage is paid off. I'm at the end of my career, so I'm a higher earner compared to my neighbor with the exact same house, who's a young family, and you know, you feel for him. But why should I be paying less taxes on my property than he is? And I pay 1/5 of what he pays. Is that fair? That's just the way it is. So, you know, lucky me, but I'm lucky him. So until that property turns over, you won't benefit from it. And, you know, I don't know I'll take a look. I don't know in your particular community how the property is staying. I suspect it's probably pretty stable.
May I also add to that, that with the new things coming up in the village in these areas, in the annexed area and at the church, again, I met with Tischler Bice and went over some items that were important in terms of impact and how these developments impact our village. It's not just green space, and it's also infrastructure, and it's police. This is an option for us to think about in terms of the way we proceed with development agreements and certainly developers' fees that are coming our way, because we are impacted in this way. And the number one service we provide is the police service. So we really need to, you know, enhance them.
So this is where I'm at. I'm totally for it. We should definitely have new vehicles for our police force, absolutely. But I want to know where we're getting the $75,000 a year from. Plain and simple. I want to, you know, I want to have a second car, but I can't do it because, you know, or I want to have, there's once, you know, and you have to work with what you have. And so at this present time, that seems like a lot of money for me to say this is something that we can even stagger right now. Because that's $75,000, which $75,000 is not a lot of money, but it's a lot of money for this village.
It is to us, yeah. So I certainly appreciate the image of what's happening with the tax base and what our options are, things like that. I don't think that I certainly don't believe I have the will to do something like raise the millage. Certainly not while property values are increasing, which means we should see somewhat of an increase in the tax base. But speaking to that, I would say that that the quality of our police department certainly is one of the single biggest assets that the village is able to demonstrate in terms of continuing to have property values increase, right? And so when I think of that, like 1.1 million from the Cavista development, I'm sitting there thinking, okay, would it be possible for interest? So maybe we can't get to the 75,000, right?
We should have got the money I wanted.
Right. Yeah. So, but you know, so maybe we can't get to the 75,000 in terms of skimming through line items, although I will be doing that to see what I might be able to come up with in terms of how far could we get, because maybe interest off of something like that large nut might be able to cover the gap on something like that. And I know there's going to be how many dozen other pulls out of that, you know what I mean, in terms of we could use that for the, you know, in terms of the development fee.
No.
At least a dozen other pulls in different directions for that.
Not
for that
as
money.
I looked at it. I mean, that wasn't what I negotiated for.
Yeah.
You're
talking in terms of narrowing it down to
Certain.
public parks and public. Okay,
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, and so was law enforcement on still?
It was on my list.
Okay, Okay,
It was on my list.
okay.
Law enforcement, because I knew it impacted police.
And I understand the argument against having law enforcement on that list. However, the reality,
It could very well,
Yeah.
again, when I say law enforcement, this is developers' fees.
Was
It's not prudent to budget salary. We're not talking about salaries. That's something you have to have
Right.
every year. This
we're
is a
talking about cost
one-time
of-
only.
We're talking about cost of
So I
maintaining the
thought the
public
vehicle-
safety regarding public spaces and parks. Yep. Okay. So I guess where I'm at in terms of, I think if, so is that what we're seeing fairly confidently, that 75,000 a year is what we're talking about to maintain our, to maintain our plan of keeping vehicles up to date, 5-year rotation, staggered, right? We're fairly confident that we'd be within the ballpark of 75,000 a year. And even though that is a great deal of money to the village, I think that with a little bit of sweat, consternation, we need to be able to get there. We should be able to get there. And so I guess the variables here are FEMA resolution, payment schedule of Cavista development fees, willingness of Enterprise to work with us in terms of what the structure of that annual payment structure looks like, right? And maybe they'd be more willing to work with us if we had something like a long-term contract going out, multiple years. I'm talking beyond 60 months. It's possible. All things are possible. Okay. But do we need to do something like have a special meeting for admin and finance regarding this issue specifically, because we're looking at 60 days until our next meeting?
Yes, we're looking at 60 days until our next meeting. The thing about it is, though, so what we need to do, we need time. What I need, the first thing I do need those numbers, those comparison numbers, because that's going to do wonders for me, as far as what we spend per year. We looked at the last few years or whatever, what we spent per year for the public works vehicle, what we spent per year for the code enforcement, and what we spend per year on police vehicles.
Absolutely, we'll get that.
And so me getting that
That might bring it down a little bit. That might bring the 75 to
Yeah.
60
so
or to 50,
so
right?
Yeah, so me getting that is my starting point, which is why I've been sitting here. I want everybody to get their voices heard. I'm always like about that anyway. But I really didn't have much to say because that's my starting point. Because I need to see those numbers before I begin to start to compare in my mind everything. And I will keep in mind also with the vehicles being new and morale and those things will also add into my equation, but that is my starting point. I need to see those numbers of repairs per year and then comparing with these numbers per year. And so that's where I'm at.
So then with looking at, sorry, man.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay. So then understanding that by the calendar, we're 60 days to convening again with this committee, I worry that we will run out of time on one or more vehicles within those 60 days. So assuming that we are able to reconvene in 60 days in this committee and find a solution at least to an initial plan that could be enacted, what are the odds that can happen, and then that it could be, I'm assuming this is the budget, it's going to go to full council. So is this possible that May, is that what we're saying?
Yeah,
Yes.
the only other thing that we could do is we could, since we have the planning and zoning meetings every Tuesday, now we can. No, I'm saying like we have
Every month.
I mean every month. We have every month. I'm saying we can piggyback on that. And if the planning and zoning starts at 6:30, we can start at whatever you can say 7, and whenever it ends, we can do it right afterwards. Because planning and zoning, we're all here already. So the only thing has to do, the mayor will probably leave, and then we'll stay here, and we can just knock it out one item agenda and just knock it out at the So the next day we have the next time we have that planning and zoning meeting, we can put it right after the planning and zoning meeting.
Will
if
we
want
have,
to.
will we?
But we need to get that information.
Right, so would we have, is it possible by the next planning and zoning meeting then, next
I
month?
mean, that's up
Is
to.
it possible to have actionable information by
That's-
that time?
Hopefully, that's up to the manager, that's up to the
Okay.
CFO. Councilperson Roman, I know you.
So we'll need the information that we've been asking for, which is what we're paying right now for annually for
Repair.
maintenance,
Right.
repairs and maintenance. And then we'll also need our staff to really get creative, look at that number before even coming to the committee. Because even if we look at those numbers, we still need to figure out, okay, let's say those numbers are $10,000, where are we gonna get $65,000 from? So, or 55. I mean, the number goes down, which is great,
Right,
but we're still needing, in order to start this program now or stagger it,
we need
we
a
may not
plan.
need the 75,
Right,
but we need at least half of that.
yep,
So where is that gonna come from?
okay.
And that's where we're at. So that information is the starting point. Madam Manager, is there anything you want to add?
I think I said where it was gonna come from, but, okay, yeah, we can, we'll put some plans together and get that to you.
Yeah.
as soon
And
as
so
possible.
the next when's our next month's planning and zoning? The planning and zoning is the second Tuesday. Is it always the second Tuesday?
Yes.
Always the second Tuesday, right?
Got it
So we're talking about.
at 14th.
And we'll have to get this to the clerk, because she's not here tonight, but we're talking about is the 14th?
Mhm.
Okay, so it'll be April 14th, Tuesday, April 14th, and we'll have the clerk put a special administration and finance meeting after the planning and zoning meeting,
With a single agenda item.
with a single agenda item. Hopefully, I mean, we're not done yet, because there might be other stuff we might need to, we might need to put on. But so far with that single agenda item, we'll get that information to the clerk. Councilperson Roman, anything else you want to say before we leave? Councilperson Irvine, anything else? Madam Manager?
No.
Mr. Attorney?
I would just interject briefly. When we were looking at the take-home vehicles for the police department before we implemented that, the former CFO had put together some figures looking at the cost of the take-home vehicles and wear and tear, maintenance, so maybe we can go back and share that with the CFO so he can look at some of that to see if it even makes sense to be a part of this discussion. Because we did look at some of those issues when we were looking at the take-home vehicles.
Yes, we did. In fact, we discussed, the balance of the take-home vehicle situation as well. So we'll bring all of that together and bring it to you before the meeting.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councilperson Roman? Councilperson Irvine? Madam Manager?
No.
Mr. Attorney? Lieutenant? Anything else you want to say in closing?
Thank you.
My brother, you good? Mr. CFO, anything you want to say about this? No? Anybody from the audience wants to say anything about this leasing program? No? All right, so we're going to move on to the, so we have a special Administration and Finance Committee meeting coming up. What's that, April 14th? All right, moving on to the next thing. Mr. CFO, this is G3. This is the Public Affairs Budget Update. Just kind of see where we're at with public affairs. There's a reason why we brought it up. Yeah, no, like, why did we bring it up? There's a reason why. The reason why we brought it up, it came out of the meeting. It was a lot of stuff we covered in the meeting. But in the meeting, we were talking about updating the numbers. It was the numbers of public affairs, correct? Because
Yes.
of the
galas
galas
were
and
left
stuff.
out
And so
on the
we just want to
final.
see where we're at.
Yeah.
I knew you would be here. That's why I wanted to bring it up. Yeah.
Well, it just to reiterate what happened in the Public Affairs Committee, I just wanted it to be, on the record that the numbers did not match up to the actual intent of the council from our budget hearings. For some reason, that budget was askew and did not reflect the galas that we committed to attend. So our interim CFO was able to look at those tapes, the recordings, and then certified that he reviewed it, and this was the intent. So the new budget was passed out at, it was given to the Chairperson Roman first, and then supplied to you all for your review.
Councilperson Roman, I don't know if there's anything you want to add. Like I said, the reason why we were discussing this, like, the numbers were,
No, I
because
mean,
of Gal- and-
I'm good with,
That's
that
all.
was,
and
that
he-
was our
and he-
biggest.
He's not at the public affairs meeting, so I was like, if there's anything you want to,
Oh,
ask
okay,
him
yeah,
about,
no,
so,
I mean, I think we were good.
yeah.
I didn't have any, the only the only pending items that we had were, I'd like to know where we finished off with each of the events last year, like
We
what,
can do that.
what our expenses were. And then that's it. I mean, that's really, now that we have that, I mean, I think that's great. I like that. We're looking to have more sponsors as we move forward with our events. So it is great that we can code so that we know what money's coming in. And yeah, I mean, we've trimmed this budget quite a bit. So, this was an area that we could, in the past, probably take for some cars, but we no longer have that. So, this is at the bare minimum, this public affairs, budget. So, I think you guys did a great job, and thank you for, fixing it. That's
Thank
it.
you, Councilperson Roman. Councilperson Urban? Ms. Manager? No? Mr. Attorney? No? Mr. CFO, anything you want to add before you're out of here, my brother? I know it's time for you to.
Oh, no.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, you're not out of here yet.
No,
Yeah,
no.
you can go ahead and say, my bad, you're not out of, you're not out of here yet. I was like, you're not out of here yet. All right, so moving on to agenda item, my bad, I tried to set it up. Yeah. Moving on to agenda item G4. So this is a new G4. We added this, and this is G4. This is about the vacancies. Councilperson Roman.
Okay, yes. So, I'll let the attorney read it on the record.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one would be an ordinance of the mayor and village council of the village of El Portal, Florida, submitting to the village electors a proposed amendment to the revised village charter, section 2.05, to provide that the village council shall fill vacancies by majority vote or by special election, forfeiture of office for missing meetings, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Great. So this came about, with, I guess, the vacancies that we've encountered in the last year or so, and looking into the future, I think we should definitely consider bringing this to the residents for consideration. There's a couple of sections here that we were proposing. One is, and this one I brought up, I think, my first term in office, like when I was in first year or second year, is that, if a council person gets elected, unless they're completely ill, they should be here at every council meeting. It's our duty, we're sworn into that. And so, we haven't had this, and so I think it's really important that we give a number. So the number, what we did was that I asked the attorney to look at different municipalities, and we did, Miami Shores being one of them, Village of Biscayne Park, and then North Bay Village being the third. And we took what they do and what's sort of the norm, and we agreed that 4 consecutive regular meetings without being excused. So that's, without checking in and saying, I'm ill, or, whatever that is. By the council, for any meetings missed, the person would be disqualified. And then the second part of that is a council member shall forfeit his or her office if he or she misses 6 regular meetings during any 1-year period commencing January 1st and ending December 31st. So that's to cover, okay, well, I've missed 3, let me come to this one, and then I'm going to miss the next couple of meetings, right? And so, I think as we look forward, this is really important to have. So that's the first part. The second part is filling vacancies, which is the vacancies, this would be if we would have had this, then we would have been able to do this with the 2 vacancies that we had within this term. And so the first one is saying that if it's less than 6 months remaining of an unexpired term, the vacancy shall be filled by a majority vote of the remaining council members within 30 calendar days following the occurrence of the vacancy. So that means that, we would vote, and then the majority, we would fill it, correct? Do you have anything to add to that? Am I
can just further
explaining them
explain.
correct?
Yeah, I think you are. I think maybe I should just back up a little bit, because I think one of the things that we also looked at was the county.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, the county, yes.
Right, so one of the main issues with vacancies is that there's a cost to the village that's incurred through having to run a special election. So one of the first order of business was to look at how common is it in municipal charters that the vacancies are filled by the commission through an appointment process. And it's extremely common. I think when we looked at, or at least when I looked at all of the other municipal charters, we're the exception, not the norm in terms of having vacancies filled by village commissions. But they do all provide for, most of them do provide for duration, how much time is left in the unexpired term. So if it's like, I guess the happy medium would be if it's more than 6 months, the village council or most commissions would have the option of saying, okay, we're gonna appoint through majority vote through some process that you all would design, such as having potential candidates submit applications to the commission, workshopping, whatever the case may be, or opting to do a special election. So that's why we have incorporated in here two processes, one for less than 6 months and one for more than 6 months. Obviously, if there's a vacancy, a tie or inaction can occur if two council people says no, 2 says yes. So there's a default position that if there is an inability to either fill the vacancy or to call a special election, then it defaults to a special election that the mayor must call if there's an inability to do that. And so because, the last thing is because I want to be complete, still the last thing that is of consideration, in order to have this considered, it has to be a proposed ordinance, has to have 2 readings, and then it would be put to the electors at the next general election. So this would be a resident voter decision as to these different questions that are being proposed.
So we're proposing 3 questions, one for each of the items. The first question being, should the village charter be amended to provide that the village council shall fill council vacancies by majority less than 6 months remaining in the unexpired term? Yes for approval, no for rejection. Second question being, should the village charter be amended to provide that the council may fill council vacancies by majority with more than 6 months remaining in the unexpired term by appointment or special election? So we're basically going to have an option there, if it's 6 months or more. And then the third question is, should the village charter be amended to provide that the council person who misses 4 consecutive regular meetings without being excused or 6 regular meetings in 1 year shall forfeit his or her office? Comments?
Yes. Okay.
Councilperson.
I feel that I could confidently support I just termed it in my notes here, absentee removal. Like anyone who's missing that many meetings, I would agree, should be removed from the council because on a lot of levels it becomes unacceptable. So I feel very comfortable saying I would support that. I would have a very difficult time supporting giving the option more than. Here's how I would amend it. I would say 9 months, or less than 9 months left in a term, the council could fill that position through a unanimous vote. I have discomfort with majority vote, and I have discomfort with more than 6 months allowing the council to fill the vacancy. I consider the sanctity of democracy, honestly, as I look at this, and so
So,
I would acknowledge that there are certain 6 months is such an outrageously short period of time that I do support that vacancy being filled by a vote from the council. But I would encourage the council to make it a unanimous requirement as opposed to a majority, especially for such a small council as this. And if we were a much greater council, I would see the majority as being logical. But in this environment, I would feel very strongly that the wording be unanimous, not majority, and understanding that going out to even almost a year left, it's just such a short period of time. I feel like I would be comfortable saying, okay, less than 9 months, council votes on a replacement. More than 9 months left. That's the way the cookie crumbles. We eat the cost, and we have a special election.
So here's the thing, when we had the election we're in 2020, so in 2019, we had our election in November. And in January, we had a council person who quit. And it cost us $17,000. For a big community, that's not a lot of money. For a small community like ours, $17,000 is a lot of money.
Yes, but
And so we're not saying, there's clearly that option is giving to, either we call a special election, or we look at the candidates that are interested. That's not saying that, we're not going through a process.
It might be the case where, I'll acknowledge that it might be the case where, we're talking about Councilperson Dreher, right?
Correct.
Okay, so I might acknowledge that in that situation, if it had been the case that his position was going to be filled by a majority vote from the council, it's entirely possible he might not have resigned. That might have entered into his calculus as to whether or not he would choose to resign or not. And so, so maybe I could be mistaken in that I'm torn on this. I really am torn on this.
So
obviously.
here's the thing, we're
Yeah.
all residents, we're all
Yeah.
here, we're elected, we're all here to do the right thing for the village. A majority then would be the three, right? The three.
Right, because remember, when you'd be voting, you would be one less council
Right.
person. So
Right.
what you're suggesting is that in order to fill the vacancy it would be all four would have to agree of the
Right.
remaining council people.
Right.
Yeah.
I would fully support. I would fully support.
What do the other ones have? Do they have majority? They have majority, right?
Yeah, everything,
I would-
All the other municipalities have majorities.
Right, I didn't really do a grid of all of them, but there were a handful that had
Oh,
supermajority, like 4 out of 5. But in this case, there's only 5 council people, so you'd be having to have unanimous approval of the remaining 4.
Right, but so for example, in the world of physics, there's a famous phrase that begins almost every example, and that is assume zero friction. But in the real world, you can never assume zero friction. You always assume that there's some sort of friction. But to give the example, you assume zero friction so that the theory or proof makes sense. And so understanding the circumstances statistically behind frequently somebody leaving a council, we're talking about drama. On a council this small, I don't assume ideal situation in this. I assume I assume, a dramatic, unideal situation. And so, for that reason, for mitigation of drama, which then brings the appearance of impropriety, as they say, I would fully support unanimous vote being the terminology, and I would support going as far back as like 9 months. Is less than 9 months left? The council agrees unanimously on a replacement. I could fully support that. Once it gets out beyond 9 months, I feel fairly strongly that that the residents should have a greater say in who it is that fills that
Right.
vacancy.
So this is not to say, so this is just saying that this is for our options. This is not to say that we can't put together a committee of residents to help us vet the,
That's still walking away from the democratic process almost entirely.
I mean, but you're still seeing, so clearly, you have Miami-Dade County. I have it right in front of me. I could share it with you. It shall be filled by majority vote of the remaining members of the board within 30 days. You have Miami Shores that says the vacancy occurs on the council. A majority of the remaining members shall appoint a qualified person to serve until the next regular election. You have Biscayne Park. The office commissioner shall be vacant upon his death, they use death here, resignation, removal, this is, where's the thing? But it's the same thing.
I
So
understand the example.
it's, I mean, we don't need to
Yeah.
reinvent the wheel here. But it does need to be addressed.
I will also say that under, let's say, normal circumstances, while $17,000 is hefty for this village, it weighs a lot, $17,000 on this village. And under normal circumstances, it's not going to break us. And so, in fact, this issue specifically is part, Madam Manager, why I am asking what is our current output for special counsel in the Ronnie Huffnagel arbitration, because I have a feeling that the $17,000 that we're agonizing over right now is going to be a fraction of what we're putting out in the cost of that arbitration. And so that's what I mean to say, under the normal, if things are operating normally within this village, while $17,000 hurts and hurts bad and will hurt probably for 2 fiscal years while we figure that out, I don't know that I am so outrageously reluctant to support this council having the power to name someone to the council without having input from the residents, specifically because we're so small. We are the smallest in Miami-Dade County, and specifically because
We're not the smallest, but yeah.
because in these circumstances, the residents do come out with a voice. I mean, I understand our voter turnout is outrageously low.
It's extremely low,
Extremely low even.
especially for a special election.
Yes.
So a special election, you're looking at, I mean, what, do you know what the turnout was last time?
It was just under 100 people.
Under 100 people. I mean, it just doesn't, I mean, I like to hear the vice mayor, the chair's
Yep.
opinion.
Yeah, before I speak, Madam Manager, did you want to respond?
Yes, I do want to respond. I think that, Councilperson Urban, with all due respect, the arbitration has nothing to do with the cost of a special election. I don't think we can compare employment issues to something like this. I also don't think a small village like this should be avoiding costs or avoiding a staffer who may not have been doing work or may not have been doing it up to par. And that is certainly not up for discussion here at this point, but I just want to go on record as saying that that doesn't I mean, that's not the same thing, and it's not fair to put that on the table as part of this.
Councilperson Earl? All right, so when I look at this, it's funny you say unanimous because I wrote that on here a few times, the word unanimous. You guys, besides majority unanimous, everything else I'm good with. I'm okay with everything else. The only thing I would say is to make the majority unanimous. That's the only thing. That's the only thing. Besides that, though.
So here's the thing, when you do that, and the attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, which I wouldn't, it wouldn't matter, but there's always, like, right here, we're having a conversation,
Yeah,
and
for
we're
sure.
having a discussion, and we're not agreeing,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So why have something added if there's a possibility that we will not agree?
I understand.
100%.
I understand what you're saying, but I think that. And Mr. Attorney, if you want to jump in real quick.
You know,
Go ahead.
I respectfully think it's really up to the residents.
Right.
So if the majority of this committee says, let's make it unanimous, right? And to use Councilman Urban's analysis, in the future, there cannot be unanimous agreement, you automatically default to a special election. And,
Right.
and the residents choose. So if you all want to, if the majority of this committee says it should be unanimous, then that's what the working proposal is. And the residents can vote it up or down.
Yeah, I think that, and this is why I say unanimous. I think that, and I'm not going to even go to like any negative thoughts that I have in my mind right now. But I think that with unanimous, like you say, people will disagree. But I think that everybody who will be up here will have the village's best interest as far as like we don't want the village to spend money on a special election. And so making it unanimous, it pulls everybody to a centrist position, I feel. Because if it's majority, and look, I'm gonna say it in front of the camera, people don't wanna talk about this, but politics is crazy. And especially politics is crazy when you have like people, they have this group over here, and like these people over here support this politician, and these people over here support this politician. And then we have sunshine, but sometimes people talk when they're not on the dais. And they're like, hey, you know who I think is real good? So-and-so. And then that person has the 2 votes. And it's already planned before they even come to the meeting. That happens. When you make it unanimous, it's like, okay, you know, Omar, the people that support Omar might see things differently from Urban, but that makes Omar and Urban be like, well, I like this person. Well, I like this person that you don't. All right, well, what about this person? You know what? I could deal with that person. So it makes the whole council pull into the more centrist position, I feel, when you make it unanimous. Instead of like a couple people like talking behind the scenes and then they get somebody on the thing and then the person they bring on, they, you know, owes them a favor, owes them votes, and it can get real messy like that. So I agree with everything. I agree with the 60 days. I agree with everything except for a majority into unanimous. And even like if you look at number 7, I made a note for number 7. Mm-hmm. If you look at number 7, it says, notwithstanding any quorum requirements established herein, if at any time full membership of the council is reduced to less than a quorum, so less than a quorum would be like 2 people. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? The remaining members made by majority vote is just 2 people, so it's 1-1. So you can't really, so even there you have to take majority out because you'll have 1-2 people just arguing over 2 different people. So that has to be unanimous even if nothing else was, but I want all majority to be unanimous, and I support this 100%. That's my only thing. Councilperson Urban.
Just one more comment. In terms of policy, both in private and public, doing things for the convenience of administration, I have found to always be bad policy. It reduces productivity, it reduces morale, which further reduces productivity. Red tape that everybody talks about from here to eternity is made up of for the convenience of the administration. And I feel that this, on its face, is for the convenience of the administration. And it's inconvenient when someone leaves the council unexpectedly, which means you're not going to get a convenient solution to that, nor should you expect one. And so trying to create a situation where you have something that is outrageously inconvenient, and then the equivalent of glossing over that and just making it as easy as possible to solve it, does not address what might have caused the problem in the first place, and is not going to get your best possible result out of that situation. And so, I feel that this is for the convenience of the administration, and I feel that's a mistake.
That's a mistake. I just think that it's preparation, and this is going to come up a little bit later also. I think it's just preparation for, just preparing for the future.
Absolutely.
It's just preparing for the future because, we think like, okay, so we're in bad shape now financially. And we're assuming that, what they say when you assume, right? But we're in bad shape now financially. And, we're thinking that and we're hoping that, with the development and things will be different, but man, we're not always, all of us are not always going to be up here. That's the first thing. And then secondly, you don't know, it could get worse one day. You know what I mean? We could get, the manager's like, how can we get financially worse than now? But it may get worse one day. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that we need to have these things in place just for the what ifs.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of like what we're doing with WAN and Proserbia, and we're changing these things and
Right.
we're adding these things and we're bringing everything and color palettes and things like that. So we have like what if somebody wants to come in here one day and paint something hot pink, you know what I mean? Or so it's like let's just have this stuff set. Mm-hmm. We may not ever have to use it, but let's just have it in place. And that's kind of like how.
Absolutely.
way I
I
see
mean, you
that.
have to plan for what could happen. And this is not putting a Band-Aid or avoiding administrative work. This is, it clearly is a standard across government.
Let's be
And-
very clear, though.
And then secondly, hold on, it's
Yeah.
clearly a standard. And secondly, it's being fiscally responsible. Because right now, and I know the two are two very separate subjects, as the manager mentioned, the Hufnagel situation, but we've been sued before. We've been sued plenty of times by employees. Same person, as a matter of fact. And so it's never been easy for the village in terms of financials. We've always, as long as I've lived in the village, and I've been involved as a resident before on the council, we've always had concerns with our budget. So, and that's where I'm coming from. So, I hear the two of you. My big thing is that by having it unanimous, you may still be going into a special election. So that's my only worry, is that we're still, if we can avoid that, and be able to have a majority. I mean, you're not talking about, and yes, and I get what Nickerson is saying. I thankfully have not lived that. At least I don't think I've lived that since I've been on this council. But I can see where it could happen. So I'm seeing both sides, but I'm also seeing our size, our budget. We're not gonna have a lot of development left. I mean, we're looking at what we have. So I don't see our budget increasing, anytime in the near future.
Thank you, Councilperson Roman. Let me bring up anybody from the audience. Anybody have anything to say about this? Any comments you want to make?
As a resident before you get
Yeah,
sworn
as a
in.
resident. Just say your name and address for the record.
Louis Barilla, 103 Northeast 89th Street. Yes. Well, yeah, it's, I think the first time when they brought it up and saying by appointing somebody, everybody actually went, was opposed to the idea of the council appointing somebody else to fill up the chair, but not looking at or hearing to what most of the cities actually, have in place is pretty much reasonable to like doing so ourselves and save ourselves. Like these special elections were amazing because I saw a lot more involvement of the neighbors and coming and doing this stuff. It was great. I met some very wonderful people that were trying to run and everything, and we all got together and say, hey, let's save the village this money. If you're gonna run, I'll be happy. Where are your ideas? Where is this? Where and that? And we all got together and was like, okay, let's just do this. Let's plan. So that was great. As a community, as a neighbors, it was great that you had some people really caring about our
Funding.
town
budget,
and how how to save the money and how to do that. It was amazing, and so I think if we can save those $17,000 or $15,000 by appointing somebody, I will also feel comfortable with the idea of having to be like unanimous instead of like, because of just I think it's a little bit, it brings a little conflict of like interest by
Conflict of interest.
having two people siding just to have somebody in and something like that. So unanimous, you have to, as official, elected officials, we just have to act and put our difference aside in that moment and say, this is what's best for us. And even though I don't probably agree too much on many things you might have to say and you come up with, but that just to fill up a chair, I think we could all come together and say, well, let's do this. Because it's more about the residents. We should be the ones appointing, because we got appointed by the residents. And so it should be kept like that. So if whoever's sitting in those chairs are appointed or are elected by the residents, right? So each of the ones sitting over there are representing the residents. So I don't think it should be, a big issue if whoever's sitting in those chairs appoint somebody else just to fill up that chair. But it could be, unanimous instead of majority, I will say.
Thank you.
Yeah, I will feel also comfortable with that term.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Let me also say that like I still feel wholeheartedly it should be unanimous, but it could be unanimous amongst who's present. For example, if there's one person that doesn't gets kicked off or whatever happens, and there's 4 people left, and let's say that the council meeting where we're going to do this at, one of the 4 people are absent. We don't have to wait for that 4th person. We should put language in there that it should be unanimous amongst who's present.
Is that clear?
No, but that's inherent in the charter.
Okay, so
It's as long as you have a quorum,
then that's what it is.
the recommendation
It'll be
of unanimity
Okay.
would be of the
All right, no
members
problem.
present for the quorum.
Just making sure we
Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
So Mayor, so I heard everybody, but I just want to beat the devil's advocate again.
No problem.
Because if, let's say, we can't agree, right? But I have in my back pocket somebody I want to get elected, guess what? I'm probably going to say no and say, just let's go for the special election. You're going to get elected. I'm going to help you campaign and you're going to get elected. That can happen too. So if we're doing it for that reason, we're not avoiding. I mean, when people want to scheme and do things, they're going to do it regardless. So if that's your only reason, I just needed to be the devil's advocate and bring that up. Because again, what I'm trying to also avoid is the special election. So if we're unanimous, I mean, it's really hard to get 4 people to agree.
I understand.
So I'm just,
I understand. I hear you, Councilperson Roman. I just think that, and I think that for the first reason why I gave. I think that in the spirit. I think that having it unanimous in the spirit also is kind of like the rest of us who are up here representing the village, like we're all covering the village. You know what I mean? Like, so imagine if like, you know, a couple of the people want to go one direction and, you know, my mind is somewhere else. And the people that, you know, elected me, we have a different vision of things and things like that. And it's like you guys just outvote me. And like the people that represent, the people that, you know, that I represent that might have a different vision than what you guys have, they're not represented because I was just outvoted. So it's like they weren't even represented to bring in another person. So I think just having a unanimous, man, I truly feel like it's going to force everybody to a centrist point.
Is that it? Okay, let's add it.
So I think that if we can do unanimous, this is my suggestion. I think that we should come back with the language unanimous, and we should put it on the April 14th.
If I may, just,
Is it?
if I may, just simply make the motion to
Add unanimous. And,
make a motion to accept this, forward it to the full council, instructing me to change the wording to unanimous. And just to be 100% clear, I will also put in here, having the concern about making sure that it's understood that a quorum is required. So unanimous vote of the council members constituting a quorum. That way, everybody will be sure.
yeah, because we're trying to. So this has to be in by when, Mr. Attorney?
Well, I wish I could answer that. I
The
know that
clerk,
the
okay.
supervisor of election has a process by which to get the ballots ready for the general election. So I would, the last time I spoke to her, sometime April,
Yeah.
we have to get it.
So I want to go on the record and say this, because I don't want people to think that we're just being introduced to this and we're ramming it through to full council, because we received this before, and I had that problem with it then. So this is not the first time that we're seeing this. I want everybody to know that, because I don't want everybody to think, because I'm really about transparency and really about. So I don't want people to think that we just saw this tonight. We're ramming it through, and we've seen this before, and so I have no problem with if everywhere you see majority, if you can change it to unanimous. Then, and we can put it through. I'm the chair. I can't make a motion, but before we make a motion, Councilperson Roman, anything else you want to add?
Nope.
Councilperson Urban, Madam Manager, Mr. Attorney.
I need to really research that rule, because the last time I looked up the Robert Rules of Order, there was no prohibition on the chair making a motion, but I'll go back and double check that.
That's the way we've always
done
it.
I gave you the cheat sheet on it. I don't think that
No,
you
'cause
have
I
a prohibition.
motioned.
That'll be a fun new project for me for Robert's Rules. I'll look at it too.
What's that?
That'll be a fun new project for me too in the Robert's Rules. I'll
Yeah,
look at
'cause I
it.
remember
the way-
looking
that's
that
the
up
way we've
before,
always-
and it came down on the side that
Yeah.
we opined that the chair can make a motion.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Because the mayor always told me that. That's why the mayor never makes her own motion.
Without digressing too much, usually the chair doesn't make the motion
Yeah.
because the chair always wants to see where the votes are going. So if
Right.
the chair
Oh,
wants to-
I'm not doing it. I'm not
I
doing
know
it.
that.
I'm not
I
doing it
know
for
that.
that reason. I'm doing it because I don't want people to think that like I'm trying to take over the meeting
understand.
on the
I
chair.
understand.
Okay.
So do I have a motion to move this to full council with the word change from majority to unanimous?
I'll motion to move it with the word changing from majority to unanimous.
Do I have a second? I'll second it. Madam Manager, may we please have a roll call, please?
Okay. Councilperson Urban,
No.
Vice Chairperson, Councilperson Vamari Roman,
Yes.
okay, and Chairperson Vice Mayor Omar Nickerson.
Yes,
Okay.
All right, thank you very
majority,
much.
2-1.
appreciate it. Councilperson Obron, you can say.
The manager's asking if there is in the rules that we need to table the rest of the meeting as it's 11 p.m.
Oh, we need to make a motion?
Yeah, I was gonna make the announcement. Since
I'm
we-
sorry. Okay.
Well,
Okay.
May I please have a motion to continue the meeting?
Well, you don't have to do that for a committee meeting. The chart only applies to council meetings. So we could be here till tomorrow if you want.
Well, here we go.
Just because I looked it up.
You
earlier.
said nothing, man. Bring in the DJ.
All right. If I could have the attorney read the
this
second.
is the next one.
Yeah.
This would be G5. This is the staggering the council.
Okay.
terms.
An ordinance of the mayor and village council of the village of El Portal, Florida, submitting to the village electors a proposed amendment to the revised village charter, section 2.03, to provide that the term of office for the village council members shall be staggered, with the first and second highest number of votes shall be 4 years, and the term of office for the council members receiving the third and fourth highest number of votes shall be 2 years, providing for severability and providing for an effective date. If I can just introduce this, I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. Right now, every 2 years, the entire council is up for reelection. The staggering of terms obviously tries to create continuity on the council and to have that, and the way to stagger it traditionally is just doing it by highest vote getters versus lowest vote getters. So I think that's pretty much the
Council-
ESPN highlight on that one.
Councilperson Roman, I know you want to.
So this has always been a concern of mine, especially not before I got up here, but after I got up here, because the learning curve up here, it's a long one. And then not only that, but this November, we could possibly be a new council. And, I don't think that that's healthy for the village. So I thought, this is something that I've been discussing with the attorney of bringing up. And the time came, perfectly with the other one. But yeah, I think we should stagger. And so, this is straightforward, like he says.
And then, not to state the obvious, but then every 4 years, the full council comes up. And then, instead of every 2.
So it would be, we still have elections every 2 years, but then
The lowest vote getters would run the
again,
second
the
year.
second year,
And then the highest vote getters would run 4 years
4 years
after.
after.
Right, so you at no point in time would you have all four, I'm sorry, all five.
So the lowest, so then the lowest
Would run,
would run for a 4-year term?
no, the lowest.
The highest votes would be 4 years.
Right.
Right,
And
two
then
low-
the two
yeah.
lowest would be, so there's 4 council people.
Yeah.
So you have 2 highest and 2 lowest.
Mhm.
The 2 highest will be 4 years, the 2 lowest will be 2 years.
Mhm.
The mayor's always 2 years.
Okay.
but what he's saying is that.
The 2 lowest are gonna run for another 2-year term, 2 years
Correct.
later, which means they'll be up again in that 4th
Right,
year.
but they'd be running against
Well,
the
if they
4
have-
years,
yeah.
the ones for 4 years.
That's what I'm saying, so every 4 years.
If I may.
We all come back around
Basically,
again.
basically, I think what he's trying to say is,
Right.
so the situation is, like, if this were to pass and everything that was to go through, the first time we do it is going to be the problem. Because the first year that we do it, we may have to do it to where we only run 2 people.
No, because.
Because
the first
we
year you do
need
it-
to find a way to stagger.
Oh, excuse me, the first year you do it, that's when you determine who's gonna get the 4 versus the 2. Because everybody has to run this year. So it's like, right,
But what he's saying is, okay, so the 2 lowest people get 2 years.
but what he's saying
All I'm
is that
saying-
everybody runs
Yeah, all I'm
in the
saying-
4th year.
Yeah, exactly. All I'm
Yes,
saying is
yes.
cyclically,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
Every 4 years is
Yeah.
when everybody has to run.
Everybody
Right.
has to run.
Right.
Okay, see, I wasn't sure because in order to avoid that, from what you guys were saying, to avoid that, I was thinking that what we were gonna have to do was stagger.
It is staggered because
Right.
those 2 people, if they don't get reelected,
Right.
then it's gonna be 2 new people.
Yeah. No, I'm for this. This is.
No, it'd
this
be
is
2
good.
new people, but after they run those first 2 years, when they have to run again in
Right.
4 years, everybody runs.
They
Then
have-
it could be a whole new council again.
Sure.
So in order to get rid of the whole new council problem coming up, we would have to at one point, from a starting point somewhere, we would have to stagger to where only 2 people run.
No, this still is a.
Because then we would have some people on like even years and some people on odd years. So then there would never be everybody at the same time.
Right.
See, now we all run on even years. We either run with the presidential election or we run with the midterms.
Right.
Right.
If we were to have it to where we have 2 people always run off, then it will always be staggered for the rest of the time. So we could have 3 run with midterm and president, and we could have 2 always run the other 2 years off.
Right, but what's being proposed here is just that you're only looking at having the council potentially being newly constituted every 4 years.
As opposed to every 2.
As
As opposed to every
to
2.
years.
Right. So this is much better.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what this is doing.
Yeah.
That's all it's doing. Because, when you looked at the other scenarios, what you were talking about, some villages or municipalities has, okay, if you're in odd numbered seats, you run every 2 years. If you're in even numbered seats, you run every 4 years. And when I looked at that, I was like, well, how are we gonna determine with this? Flipping a coin would not be the best,
Way of doing it.
panacea for that problem. So the default would be, okay, every 4 years is the only time that you may have a newly,
You could.
you could have a newly constituted commission. Just,
No,
But if you've been for years.
I know I confused it, but this
Yeah.
does
No, no,
make
but I
this
think
does
it
make
was-
sense, and I'm
I
for
think
it.
it was
Yeah,
great
yeah.
that you said that, because
Yeah.
Yeah.
when you read it, it kind of gives the perception that you will never have a scenario where potentially all four council persons could be, but then you're also forgetting the wild card, the mayor position has to run every 2 years also.
Right.
So you could potentially always have somebody.
Why would
up
the
there.
mayor position not be 4 year? Considering that might have the most difficult learning curve.
Well, that's
Power.
very interesting. A lot of municipalities.
No, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
That's very interesting, Councilwoman, that you asked that, because a lot of municipalities, especially the smaller ones, the mayor's term is only 2 years.
It's a lot of work.
And in a lot of municipalities, it's ceremonial. Some of the council actually votes for that. For
Okay.
Excuse me.
okay, fair enough. No, I'm good with this. I don't need to discuss any further.
Yeah, I mean, even though this is the first time we're seeing it, but yeah, but it's pretty self-explanatory. So, I think,
Are you guys comfortable moving this to the council?
yeah, I think
Okay.
I'm pretty good with moving.
I'll make a motion to
Moving this,
move
Tyler,
this
do I have a motion to move this?
resolution to the
Okay.
full council.
I'll second.
All right, thank
All
you
in
very.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's wait for a
All right, so
roll
we'll
call.
let the manager know
Wait for a
that,
roll call.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's kind of late. Try to speed this meeting up a little bit. This is,
I don't think the CPA needs to stay.
huh?
Does he need to stay, the CPA?
I was saying no, but the
No.
manager was like, yes. I was like, that's why I thought we could leave.
Yeah, he went over the report.
Yeah,
He's
so
fine.
the manager said,
You're the chair. You could dismiss him. Oops.
Yeah, No, we're good. All right, Madam Manager, can we have a roll call? We made a motion and we have a second for moving to the full council. The resolution about staggering the terms.
Okay. Councilperson Urban.
Yes.
Okay. Vice Chairperson, Councilperson Roman.
Yes.
Okay. Chairperson, Vice Mayor Omar Nickerson.
Yes, so that's going to be moved to the full council. Everybody, thank you very
Okay,
much for that.
unanimous.
Thank you very much, Councilperson Roman.
Thank you guys for those.
No,
Thanks.
for sure. All right, so next we're moving to, all right, we'll touch on this very quickly because without the clerk here, we don't really have too much information. This is about the additional cost of monthly planning and zoning meetings. I don't know, can we call the cameraman to the mic? I'm like, can we call the cameraman to the mic? But this is the problem. So I don't know if, like I was saying when the mayor was here, if we're getting charged because they're just coming out on a Tuesday night, then it's one thing. But if we're getting charged because after every time he's cutting that camera for an additional meeting, that's another thing. And so that plays into the additional cost of the planning and zoning meetings.
I could go get the invoice from last month to see.
I mean, it's so late. Like, do we really
I
want to
know.
wait for that? Is it okay if we put this off till the next Administration and Finance Committee meeting when the clerk's here? And we can,
Those are items.
I mean, is this something that's, but I mean, we're gonna have the
Yeah.
meetings anyway, it seems, so it's not anything
So it
that,
doesn't
it's
matter.
not something that like
It's
has to be figured out
unbudgeted.
right now.
That's very true. Right, there's no,
And we just sat here and talked about
right,
it.
there's no fiscal consequence to tabling this, yeah.
I have a copy of it if you want to see it.
But this is the problem. Even with her email, the problem is that we don't know how we're charged. So my take is we can't do anything about it tonight anyway, because we need to contact Comcast.
Full Moon.
Full Moon. We need to my bad. Shout out to Full Moon. We need to contact Full Moon to see how we're being charged. Is it because they come out like it just coming out, or is it for every additional meeting? Because like the mayor said, all we did was move. We have 4 additional meetings because we just moved the planning and zoning meeting.
If you'd like for me to go and back and get the invoice, I can do that. It won't take long if you want to address
So
something.
the email that that she sent us, she forwarded, it says from the company that, taking a look at the January 2020 PNC meeting, we are able to provide the following quote, total cost $540.69. Please remember, we have 30 minutes set up. Please let us know if you would like us to confirm the meeting February 11th at 6:30 with a 6 p.m. Thank you. So we're looking at $540 per meeting.
Because, okay, so it sounds like for them to come out.
Yeah, so it's $540.69 per meeting. So, but we already had, how many meetings a year?
You have 6.
Okay, so if we did, so she's probably right, because if we did $540.69 times 12, that's $6,488. I'm sorry? So we're looking at dividing that, right? So we're looking at approximately, I don't know where she got the 4640 from, but it's 3244.
Additional per year we have to find.
I mean, if that's, I don't know why she said 580. They said 540 and she put 580 in her email. So I don't know where she was getting that number from. I don't know if there's anything additional that she was adding to it.
I don't know. Yeah, this
How
is
much
her
is the
idea.
advertisement?
I don't know.
That's probably, maybe.
Yeah,
that's
she
what
has it.
I'm not sure.
Because she's got to advertise
She has
it.
to advertise it.
And she says she pays for that.
Yeah,
Or she
it's out of
does,
her
right?
budget, yeah. It does.
So the difference could be the advertising.
It could be the advertising.
Because she's got it at 3244. I mean, we have it, you know, based on those numbers, is 3,244 with the extra 6 meetings.
Before I say, Councilperson Urban, I know you're good. All right, so the problem is it's not budgeted. The problem, the situation also is that these meetings are not meetings where we're twiddling our thumbs either. Like, it seems to be these meetings are pretty required. Like they're filled from brim to brim when we have them. Can you come up for a second? Appreciate it. So things that we have to, put into the budget, and we have the enterprise thing out there. We're getting our public affairs on course, which is perfect. The extra $3,000, huh?
So how about we don't record?
We have to, though.
Why? We took minutes before.
Oh, okay,
We took minutes before.
So we're saying record it ourselves personally, just not video record it?
Yeah.
Just take it like just on the tape, we can record it like that?
That's how let's go back to the old fashioned way.
We could do that. The only problem with that, I would say, the only problem with that is, or people can just start coming to the meetings then, because I was gonna say the only problem with that is that planning and zoning is so much visual items that they put up for that. Everything's
Right.
visual, because
You
it's
can't
always.
really see that on the video anyway.
No?
No.
Yeah, but planning and zoning is the
can?
one committee where,
Well, you can. The video guy says you
Where
can. I guess he
every-
focuses on them.
right, planning and zoning seems to be one committee where absolutely every single word counts. So if we're gonna try and save costs by going to taking minutes, then perhaps would be a different battery of committee meetings that we would do that for.
I see what you're saying,
As opposed
because-
to planning and zoning.
Well, all our committees are important if you put it that way. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Attorney.
I'm just thinking out loud, I mean, we're in the process of proposing chart amendments. You may want to really look at your committees that you're having and seeing if there's overlap in what the committees are doing. So, I mean, if you really look at administration, for example, and public finance, I mean, a lot of what's discussed in there can overlap into public affairs, for example. So if you want to take a look at the committees and say, you know what, maybe we can just have, 4 instead of 6.
Code
Right.
enforcement into planning and zoning, for example.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And that way, you may reduce the number of meetings you're having, and the requirement of having to have these folks come out
I like that.
every meeting to videotape.
Yeah, as soon as you started to speak, I started to get ideas. So, and I think you even said it better than I was going to say. Because what I was going to say was, we just, because we're having to pay extra because they're coming out on the extra Tuesday. We just take that planning and zoning meeting and we either hold it the first or the third, where they're already coming out for other meetings. So if that's the case, so what we could do is we could move, because
So the reason, if I may, Chair.
yeah, go ahead.
The reason that I think the mayor proposed, the P and Z to be in a separate is because there's so much. I mean, we were here till 8 o'clock at night, 8:30, 9 o'clock maybe, I don't know. We were here late, huh?
Tonight it was till 9.
Okay, tonight, so P and Z tonight was till 9. Now granted, we're not gonna be like that all the time, but as, homes are selling, we are gonna start seeing a lot more variances. We've already talked about that. So P and Z, that was one of the reasons why it was said to have that meeting alone.
But code enforcement can be fairly succinct and still only occur every other month. It would still be possible to roll it in without great, without causing a
already
great
a-
additional problem. I feel like it could be accomplished, because code enforcement is technically a fairly quick kind of a process. I mean, it's all black and white, and then could easily still occur only, every other month.
It does only occur every
Right,
month.
but I'm saying, but planning and zoning would still occur monthly, but every other month you address code enforcement issues in the planning and zoning committee.
Oh, okay, so
You know
you
what I'm
don't
saying?
have a separate code enforcement meeting?
Right.
Committee.
Right.
You just address it every other month?
Correct. Within the
Okay, so we're
planning and zoning
saying,
committee.
so we're
yeah.
saying get rid of the what would be
Roll code enforcement into planning and zoning, so you eliminate the code enforcement committee meeting, yet it still occurs every other month within planning and zoning. And then public affairs similarly is absorbed into admin and finance. And now you're down to 4.
Well, we got 4, we're just discussing the same information.
Yeah.
In a length, I mean, they could be longer, whatever, I mean. that's-
Yeah, I mean,
We'll take a look at it.
Huh?
We can take a look at it and make some suggestions.
can you do that? Yeah, and I was gonna also say that if we could ever get to the point also where having these planning and zoning meetings every month, it may not have to be a permanent thing. Like things might slow down and things might, you see what I'm saying? So the 500 per meeting or whatever.
And
is-
realize tonight's situation is really because of the primary election of
Yeah.
committees being forced out of their position. That's why we're here so late tonight, was because this was piggybacked because of the primary
Right,
forcing
correct.
committee.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if we can look at all different options and come back next committee meeting, Mr. Attorney, with the different options. And
So now all cities record their meetings, just
Yeah.
FYI.
yeah, because with this, right, with this and with it being late, and you know what I mean. Like I have different options in my mind, and I'm not
Thinking
ready to make a distinct decision about it right now tonight. And like I said, these things are going to go on anyway, so there's no rush on it. So so let's
Okay, so let's
come back
table and.
till next committee meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you for staying with us as long as you. Thank you very much. This also, I think. So we're moving on to. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to say about G4? I mean, not G4, but the old G4, G6. All right. So moving on. Newsletter mailing costs. This also, I think, is something like before the mayor left. She said that we have to go get the bulk permit. So we have to do that. And is this something that we can talk about?
To be clear,
Can
that's
I
what
just-
allows us to put it into mailboxes, is that right?
At Public Affairs.
I wasn't sure why it was on the agenda.
I'll tell you
Because
why.
of the money situation.
Oh.
It's not budgeted.
I'll let you, I mean, it was on Public Affairs agenda, and based on that direction from Councilperson Roman, I asked for a quote, and I thought it would be, I don't even have the quote yet, because it's been less than a week, but I thought I would have it. I've spoken to our newsletter, the company that makes the newsletter, and yes, we do have to have a mail permit, which we don't have. We'd also need the mailing list. We don't have that. There are a lot of things we would need with that. So the quote's it's not ready. So we will need to come back to that at some point, I'm sure, by Public Affairs.
But let me ask you this though. But when we get that quote for the newsletter, is that going to come out of Public Affairs budget, or are we putting it where are we putting it?
Well, we
I'm
have,
not saying I want to put it on Public Affairs, but I'm not saying I want to add anything to your budget. I'm just asking because if it's going to come out,
Public Affairs.
it would have to be added to Public Affairs budget
okay, well then.
and taken from somewhere else. But we wanted to know what it would cost.
What it would
That
cost,
we
yeah.
just wanted to see
Because
what it
this
would
is
cost.
not an immediate need.
Yeah.
This is just, we're planning, we would like to continue to have some type of newsletter
Okay.
as after November.
All right. So I think that going forward, this can just be in Public Affairs. I don't think it really has to come back to Administration and Finance. And we'll talk about, if it's going to be a Public Affairs budget anyway, we'll talk
Right.
about that. And maybe if we have any questions about anything, because like we said, when I brought the other thing, he comes to only Administration and Finance. So if we have anything else, we can
We
add
can
it.
put it,
Yeah, we'll
correct,
put it and
yeah,
add it. So we can go to
absolutely.
Public Affairs budget. All right. The next one, Legal Affairs RFP. All right. So this is something that we have so much to go over. This is something that that we were introduced with. There's a couple things I want to say about this. This is something that we were introduced with. The direction was for us to take it back and go through it and see if there are things that we disagree, any things we wanted to change, anything like that. Now, let me say something really quickly that I want to say. All right. A few months ago, myself and Councilperson Roman, we had a debate about the tracking report, right? And Councilperson Roman, even though, and I'm saying this for the camera more than anything else, even though it seemed like we were in a big disagreement and stuff like that, one thing that we both were, and I've said this before, to where all of us want what's best for the village. We just have different ways of trying to get there or whatever. And one thing that I agree with, I agree with Councilperson Roman on many things, but the one thing that I agree with her more than anything was because she kept bringing up consistency. And so that's what she was saying. So her argument was, Chair Nickerson, I had a tracking report and we should stay consistent with the tracking report. And my argument was, well, in all the years I've been here, the chair has is able to chair his or her committee, and take it into whatever direction they want to take it in. So I was thinking of consistency of the past, you know what I mean? And she was thinking of consistency of where we left off, we need to continue. But it was all about consistency. Why do I want to bring up that word consistency? Because I want to start to begin to find a consistent way of doing things, you guys. Because, for example, because when we find a way of being consistent with everybody, then everybody's treated equally. For example, in the past, there's been times where when we hire like the clerk or something like that, where the entire council gets resumes and we go through it and this and that, and that's how we decide as a council, and majority or whatever wins, you know, like whoever we decide. Then there's been other times where we'll just have somebody sitting in the audience and one council person to nominate, you know, say, oh, I think this person to be good, and then they get a second, and then by majority vote, and we won't even go through a process of resumes or anything. And the same with attorneys, and the same with managers. Like sometimes it happens one way, sometimes it happens another way. I think that our residents would prefer it, because our residents love transparency. I think they would prefer it if we do, you know, we do resumes across the whole council, and the whole council, this is how we've done it in the past. Like, so we get all the resumes in. There's a cutoff date to where people can turn in resumes. Everybody gets a copy of all the resumes. We take them back to our homes. We go through them, and then we come up with the next meeting, we come up with, okay, these are like my top 3, right? And if we all have, like, you know, in our top 3 the same person or something like that, we're like, okay, do you agree with it? All right, so this is, hey, let's vote on this. And we do it that way, because I don't want it from now on to where for some people, it's like they were assigned to the position. But some people have to go through the RFP process, because it's just not fair. It's not fair like that. So I think for me, you know, and thanks to Councilperson Roman with that word consistency, I think to be consistent from now on, I believe we should have everybody go through the RFP process. I believe we should have everybody go through it from now on. That's the way I believe it. Go ahead, Councilperson Roman.
So I think, I mean, I haven't been here for very long.
No,
I've only
you're
been up here for 3 years. But the time that I've been here that I remember is that we've always gone through some type of selection process. You know, call it RFP, call it whatever. The only time that we did not, or the only 2 times, there's been 2 times that I think have been different. And those were special circumstances, because we removed first our, I think it was our manager first, right? Or was it our attorney first? Who went first?
The manager went first.
Okay, so we removed our manager first, and at that point, we can't go without having a manager.
Mm-hmm.
So, we needed to appoint somebody, an interim. And did that go through a selection? No. I don't think that went through a selection.
I was a part of a selection process. I applied the year before as part of the collective.
No, I know, you did, because we did have, and that's how Basil ended up. We had chosen someone else, but then Basil, that was before my time. But then, I think there was an interim or something, because somebody needed to be an interim.
Basil
You can't
Benz was
go-
the interim.
Well, yeah, but we can't go, like, for instance, if, you know.
Yeah, we can't have, by charter, we can't have it unfilled.
We can't have it on, you know, yeah, that. Anyhow, and so the attorney was the second one. And the attorney was because we were heading in that direction. And we had, I mean, these are discussions that we need to have, because this could happen again. So let's say, you know, the attorney, it's at will, right? He's not an employee, it's a contract. So let's say that we decide that, you know, or I decide that I'm no longer happy with the attorney's, you know, work, then I can say it here publicly, and, you know, one of you may say, well, you know, as a matter of fact, I did, you know, and so that's how the process starts of removing an attorney. And so someone will make a motion, you know, just like we do with everything. And so, but we can't go without an attorney. And so typically, that doesn't happen in one meeting. That happens in several meetings. So I remember I was a process of the old attorney. I expressed during several meetings that I was not happy with the attorney. And so I knew that if I'm not happy with the attorney, and this is a position that reports to us, and I'm one of the council, I am shopping around for an attorney on my own. So, because we can't have a vacancy. And so, and I remember that I was in Tallahassee, and I spoke to a couple of attorneys, you know, that I said, hey, listen, we're in the process, and I don't know where it's going, but would you be interested? Well, they weren't interested because they had relationships with our attorney. And so, at that time, when our current interim attorney, he was the only one, like because it was, the mayor was the only person to bring an attorney. But that didn't mean that none of us couldn't have. I tried bringing attorneys, but I had just been elected, so I didn't know a lot of people. So really, my recruiting efforts were in Tallahassee. So if that were to happen again, we all have, you sort of know when people aren't happy with something. And so, and that's the same thing with the manager. If we're not happy with the manager, then we're going to express it, or this is the place to express it in order for us to be able to, because it takes 3 votes. And same thing with the clerk position. If we're not happy, it takes 3 votes. So we have to express it here because we can't talk outside. So I think, and I said all that to say, I mean, it's because we have Urban here who's fairly new still, this is the forum for us to discuss this, right? And discuss those 3 positions, because those are the only 3 positions that the council is. And I do agree that it should go through a selection process, except for the fact that if we're in that position, the interim position needs to be sort of.
No, I wasn't talking about the interim, but you're absolutely right. I agree with you 100%.
Okay.
Like, as far as like when somebody leaves, I'm coming to you next, Councilperson Urban. As far as like when somebody leaves, I think that we should be able to appoint whoever for an interim position. So I think, so maybe what the problem is that from now on, and I'm probably, I'm guilty of this also, we need to stick to, because I remember when Mr. Attorney, when Attorney Powell came in, I remember I said on the dais, I said to the mayor, I was like, Mayor, we've had it to where we'll have interim for like 5 years, so I just don't want it to happen. I remember saying that to the mayor, and I just never pushed for it. So everything that we're saying, we're in total agreement. So what we just need to do, administration and finance especially, because it runs through here, what we just need to do is we need to, whenever somebody comes in as interim, whether it's a manager, attorney, clerk, whoever, we need to stick to, like, they're not going to be interim forever.
Right.
We just need to stick to it.
Well,
just,
and the thing, I think
move
what
with it.
moved us really quickly with our manager, and, we haven't had that issue with the clerk since I've been around, but is that we need to have a permanent position for the manager and for the clerk.
Yeah.
Those are employees.
Those are employees.
So those are 2 separate issues. And then you have the contract, which having him interim, or in reality, he's been here for 2 years.
it's like the same.
So it's not a position, it's at the will of the council.
Yeah.
We can choose, at whichever point, whoever's not happy, we discuss it here. I mean, hopefully we first discuss any issues with him personally, because we can pick up the phone and call him, but, him or whomever's there. But, yeah, I think it's too, I get where you're going, and I don't disagree, but I just wanted to clarify that it's 2 different.
Yeah.
You,
No, you're absolutely
You
right.
treat employees, and then a contractor is different.
No, for sure. Councilperson Urban?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilperson.
So my understanding is that in a special circumstance where you lose, say, an employee, you lose a position, okay, whether it's an employee position or contract, you lose a position. So, and certainly if it's a position such as manager or attorney or clerk, you need someone in that position, right?
Charter says we cannot go vacant.
So there you arrive at an interim position, but that reality should trigger a search for a permanent
Absolutely.
replacement, right? And so so I believe that's what Vice Mayor Nickerson is getting at, is that exactly that as there would be an interim situation, then a search, whether it's an RFP, RFQ, whatever it is essentially immediately begun. And then in that process, you arrive as a consensus among the council, as opposed to individual council members going out to fill a position on their own. And that's how you arrive at your best option for finding the very best candidate that fits the village. And so I think we're talking about two sides of the same coin here, that yes, there's going to be situations where you end up with, because of special need, because of vacancy, and you must fill that position. So of course, there's going to be times where you have an interim position, but that reality should automatically begin a search process for a permanent
Yeah, and that's
replacement.
on us as a council.
Right.
And I think on the attorney's contract, it was said that he was interim from the very beginning. I think it said a number, am I correct? That
Yeah,
is,
about 6 months or something.
it said 6 months.
Yes.
But we did not, because we were busy, and the attorney's been super busy with us with everything. So the council didn't do that. Now, it's a matter of the council, again, going back to consistency and I don't know how else we can ensure that the council, other than making it part of the charter, I guess? No, like,
We just need to stay on top of it, I think. We just gotta stay on it.
but we haven't.
I know, but from now on, I am.
And we will have new parties, so, I mean, again, this is thinking in the future. So, I mean, I think the discussion we're having right now is about the future, has nothing to do with this particular document that we have, which I have a lot of questions on, but, yeah.
Yeah, Councilperson, I mean, the only reason why I even brought that up, and I'll come to everybody else right now. The only reason why I even brought all of that up is to say, first of all, I appreciate the consistency word. We need to be consistent, and I want to be, and I said this in the beginning, I want to be fair to everybody.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I want to be fair. I don't want, some people to not have to go through a process and then have, like, one person go through a process. Like, I just don't want that. So I want to be fair to everybody. So I want to, I guess I'm saying, like, right now, I'm putting my foot in, like, my feet in the sand, in the dirt, and saying from now on, you guys, people go get interim, and then after that, we're going to resumes to get permanent. We're not going to be dilly-dallying on everything else from now on. That's the only thing I wanted to say. Go ahead, Councilperson.
I'm saying if we have an interim position at any time, that a search should begin.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true.
So,
Mr. Attorney.
You can do it by resolution or by ordinance, since maybe you need something to be, like a Damocles sword hanging over the dais.
I agree, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Which simply says that in the event that
Yeah.
one of the charter officers is a vacancy is filled by an interim position, that within 30 days,
6 months.
no, well, whatever, I'm just,
Yeah, you
Whatever,
said,
whatever period
whatever,
you
yeah.
said, but I took Councilman Urban's point, within 30 days, the search process begins.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then-
yeah.
And the position shall be filled in no later than
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah, we should.
I mean, that's the only
Something else to
way.
draft.
So hold on a second. That's the only way the council will ever do anything.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, not just the three of us, because
Yeah.
the three of us can shake
Yeah.
hands and say we're gonna do this.
Yeah.
But there might be 5
Yeah.
new people here, and we all get busy. We all have our full-time jobs. So,
so what will it take to get us to
so the only thing that gets us to move really is if we have to, if the law says we have to.
I mean, if you really want to put teeth in it, you can make it an ordinance, because a resolution can just simply be changed at any time.
Right.
So,
I'll make a motion to have an ordinance prepared for the next Admin and Finance Committee meeting to that effect. Is that specific enough or not
is there a
specific?
second?
Yeah,
I'll-
do you have
I'll
a second on that motion?
I mean, is the motion specific enough?
Yeah, I think
Okay,
it's fine.
okay.
Yeah, I understand.
Do you have a second on that motion?
I'll second.
Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Okay, so as far as the document itself, okay, I just had a couple of quick things. I know Councilperson Roman has some things, and Councilperson Urban, I'm coming to you also. Let me just say for the record, you guys, that for everybody watching and everything like that, and the way I do things is, so for everybody seeing me going to, I say whatever, I go to Councilperson Roman, then I go to Councilperson Urban, is because I do things off of seniority. And if two people are elected at exactly the same time, then I go by last name. And so that's the reason why you guys are seeing the things the way you see it. And so just to let everybody know. All right, so the couple things that I had, which really grabbed my attention from the very beginning, was, for example, on page 6 of 22. Number 1.22, 122, where it says Village Council review and award. And it says the village manager will report the result of this solicitation to the Village Council for their review, evaluation, and final selection of the respondent to be awarded this contract. The only thing that I want to make sure of is that when you get the resumes in, is that we get all the resumes. I just didn't want the manager, not just you, Manager Alou, but anybody who might be here 10 years from now. I just want to make sure that the manager themselves don't go through and kick some of the resumes out and then just bring us what they think is good.
May
Yes,
I?
go ahead.
Okay, so this is where I was going in the last meeting. The way that it's been done in the past is that the clerk gets the sealed documents, and then distributes them to the council. So the manager doesn't even touch the documents, only because the clerk is the clerk, and that's who handles documents. And then that's where I said that, the contact person should be the clerk, because she's handling, not the manager. And then that takes me, and I don't mean to,
No, you're good.
but because it's sort of, it's related to what you were talking about. There's one, there's, to your point, to what you just said, the
point.
village, so if you
2.4.
look at page 12,
Okay.
I think this is it, hold on. No, that's not page 12, sorry about that. There's somewhere here, and I'll point it
Well,
out.
I have marked on page 10 of 22, number 2.4.
Yeah, 2.4.
That's the one
That's the
also,
one that
yeah.
says that the manager will
yeah.
look through so that needs to be removed
I
completely.
have it straight to council.
Yeah, that needs to be
I wrote
removed.
straight to council, yeah.
So everything that has the village manager should be removed.
Yeah, I wrote for
It should
2.4, it should
be-
come straight to council.
And then, so this document is way too long, first of all. And I don't even think that we need it, because in reality, if you look at everything that's in the majority, I can't say everything, but the majority of what's in section 1.0 is repeated and is, in section 2.0. And in some cases, it almost doesn't, what do you call it? I can't, it's too late, I can't even think.
Repetitive?
It's repetitive, but in some cases, it also contradicts. Yeah. So, like for instance, one of the things that jumped out at me was that in one of the sections, it says that the experience, just blank experience, and then I'm like, well, no, I think they need municipality experience, and then it does say municipality experience in another section. So the entire document, it just needs to be really edited and looked at, and I don't even think we need all these sections. There's gotta be, and I know the village, there's a couple of villages that just send out, and I spoke to actually a couple of village council people, and they told me that they just send out a 2-page, basically the scope of work and the fee is what needs to go out. And then the contract
that's when you have a real document. But this is a letter, it should be a letter of intent that is sent out, and 2-3 pages maximum, scope of services, and what are, what we're, I guess, we can include our budget if we wanted to. But I think that, I made if you want me to go through all my notes, I can, but, there were a lot of things that were repetitive.
Councilperson Urban. Oh, yes, ma'am.
I was directed by you all to just come with a draft. It is a draft, so whatever, notes you have on it, this is your document for your employee, it's not mine. I just provided you something to work with, so it is a draft, and, please feel free to cut it up, chop it up, or don't use it, whatever. I think that, maybe the scope of work is really the meat of what you're looking for anyway. So whatever you want to do, don't hesitate. I'll assist in getting you where you need to go if you want.
Well, let me say, Madam Manager, I appreciate you, because I know you spent a lot of time and effort putting this together, so I appreciate that. Like I said, whether it's something that's, big, and, a lot of pages or a small amount of pages, as long as it's, it kind of flows consistently. And the only thing that I have to say was, I just wanted to make sure that we get all of the resumes. That's the only thing, because I just wanted to be clear that when these resumes come in, that nobody looks through them and says, oh, this one doesn't look any good, and we only get like a certain portion. I just want to get all of them, good, bad, and different. I just want to get make sure that all the council people will get copies of all the resumes. That's the only thing that
I can
would
get
agree with that.
access to I'm sure any of us can, but I happen to know one of the Village of Biscayne Park council people really well, and I can get access to the letter of intent that they sent out.
we want to. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I have no problem as a whole with this, as long as it it flows consistently, and as long as we definitely have it to where the village council gets all of the resumes as a whole. That's like I said, that's my only thing. Whether it's this long or whether it's shorter, I really have no. It doesn't matter to me in any way. So where we go from here? All right, so this is the thing. So if we go off of what we have in front of us, then we can, because I want to also get this process moving on also, because it's not fair to Mr. Attorney. You want to get him, get him to have his fair chance on turning his resume in, and if God willing, make him permanent if that's the way we're gonna go, or whatever. So
We've had his resume, so I think you guys know how I feel about
yeah,
the process.
I understand what you're saying. But I'm saying get all the resumes so we can go through, so we can start the process as a council of picking our permanent attorney. So my only thing is, I don't disagree with you, Councilperson Roman, if there's a shorter version or something like that. But my thing is, so once we get, so we would have to wait to get that version. Then we would basically come back to committee. Even though it's short, like if I want to look at it, if Councilperson Urban wants to look through it, then we come back with that one. So that's another committee after that. And so we're like pushing this.
Well, I could just get a copy of it tomorrow and
But you have to give it to the
forward it to
clerk
the clerk. And the clerk, when she's back or can forward it to the committee. And then, it doesn't have to be that difficult.
I'm just making sure we're going through the right.
And like I said, and I think we agreed at the last meeting, this is not of urgency. The attorney has been our attorney for 2.5 years.
If I can just say one thing, as long as you're allowed under the Sunshine Law to send information to each other, just as long as you don't discuss it. So in Eunice's absence,
Copy her, and then
you can do that, but you can certainly do that. But you can just simply say, "This is the document I mentioned last night," and that's it. You don't go back and forth and replying to that email, because I don't know how long Eunice is going to be gone, but we have to
Right.
Keep that in mind, but
That's very helpful.
just so that you're clear on the sunshine law, if Councilman Urban like read an article, and wanted to share with the committee, he could simply do that, without violating the sunshine law. It's when you guys start talking about it, and it's gonna be something that
We're voting on.
is foreseeable
Foreseeable,
to go before the council.
Madam Manager, because you took out your time and put this together, would you, but you do so much work and meetings and like big items.
Yeah, this is not her priority.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, do you even want us to even involve you in this anymore, or do
I
you
would
want us
love
to
not
send
to be
it
involved.
straight to the clerk?
It really is a
Okay.
function of the clerks,
It
and
is.
I was instructed by
Yeah.
you all to
Yeah.
do this,
And
so
we
that's why I
appreciate
did it.
and
Now,
thank
Yeah.
Because
I did it months ago, so I'm
Yeah.
over it.
Yeah.
I'm fine if you abandon it and move on to something else. I'm
Okay.
totally fine with that.
Thank you. All right. So we'll have that, send it to
I'll
the clerk.
send that over to,
and
and I'll copy the clerk
copy the
and
clerk,
the
and then
attorney,
we'll go
just
there.
so that
Because we're gonna have to have the
legal-
clerk put Village of El Portal
Yeah.
take off, and we'll have to have her
Yeah.
do all that type of stuff anyway, so. All right, so that's where we're at with that.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Next item.
Councilperson Roman, anything else?
No.
Councilperson Urban, anything else? Village Manager, anything else? No? Mr. Attorney, anything else? No? Okay, all right, you guys. I know, we have families and everything. All right,
Dinner.
moving on to manager, evaluation and pay raise. All right, so we all get, you sent in an email, the page with the salary, the breakdown.
No, I did not send that.
Did
I have
everybody
it
get
here.
that?
No, I have it here.
Okay, you have it here?
I gave it to you on
Yeah,
Thursday, but
Yeah,
I-
because we were in the meeting, yeah. Okay. And while we're doing that, did everybody get a chance to look at the employment agreement from the village manager? Did you guys not? Did we?
Right, with the employment agreement? Yeah, I did it, so I
Yeah,
know
you
it by
did.
heart.
Yeah. No, I'm saying that.
I don't know it by heart, but.
Yeah, I mean, did you receive that also? This one.
I don't think he got the
you
employment
didn't
agreement
you never
because
got
I
this?
didn't send that
Okay,
over.
we're gonna have to make this, we're gonna have to make a copy of that for you. Okay, so then we can't open this.
benefits and the whole
Okay,
package.
okay.
Okay. Let me say this because, okay, the employment agreement that, we appreciate Councilperson Roman for when she was Chair of Administration and Finance, was good. Councilperson Urban, we'll see that you get that. We just received the breakdown. So, the way I see it is that, before I even say that, Councilperson Roman, do you have any, as you look through that, do you have any questions that you already had in mind or comments about the manager pay raise or anything like that? So let me say what I was going to say. The way I see it is this. I think that we should come back, because we all received the evaluations through email, correct? Okay. I think that we have the breakdown. We received the evaluations. We'll get Councilperson Urban the employment agreement. Next committee meeting, people, we come back ready to make a decision, yay, nay, to pass it to full council.
Okay, so what are we passing
We're-
exactly? Or what's the
What
question?
would be, so the question is, so we'll come back, we'll have the manager evaluations done, we'll go over those. The question is, do we believe that the manager is due for a raise? That's the question.
Okay, and then what are we looking at in terms of a raise?
I think that would be something that we should talk about at the meeting, because depending on how we feel with like the with the information that we have here on the sheet, depending on how we feel with the evaluations and how we feel, then it might be like, oh, well, I don't think it should be this, but it should be this. So I think with all that information, so it's kind of like a manager workshop, kind of in a way. I think once we come back with all the information with the evaluations, Urbam has a chance to look through this. We have this. We come back and then we say, do we feel like she should get a raise or not? And if so,
Okay.
how much?
So I happened to speak to the manager, I don't know when, recently, about, in general, I do believe that there should be, for all of our staff, budgeted a 2% or, 3% cost of living increase annually, right? So that's one thing that we should definitely look at, because, I mean, it's just right. I
Yes.
mean, it's, and most municipalities, government offer that. So that's a separate, but we did discuss that. Now, I think, and I don't have her contract in front of me, her agreement, but I think that we did put in the contract that we would look at a specific amount of increase, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
What is that increase?
For the first year, it was to be up to 5%, and the second year would be cost of living.
Okay, so that 5% is really, she did not get that, because we had the Irma, we had the hurricane. So in reality, I would say we're looking at a range of 5 to 8%, right? So let's say 5% to honor that agreement, because we weren't in a position to do that. Up to 8% if we wanted to say 5 for that year and then 3 for, this year, but then comes the other question about our financials. So where does that come from? And we want to be fair. And I do believe that the manager does deserve to have a raise, of some type. What the, percentages, I guess it depends, because, I mean, do I think that she's worth the 8%? Yeah, absolutely. Where does that come from? So what could we afford, right? Where do we go from there? So that, I think, is what we need to sort of look at, regardless of what the FICA, retirement, all of that is, it is what it is, and it's a benefit and it's part of compensation. However, the percentage is what I would say, that's how I would view this. Now, I've had some time to think after I've sent the evaluations to everybody, and I do want to propose this. And because I've done it in the past, and I guess I didn't think about this before, because it's not what, when I came onto the council, it's not what was offered. But with having the public safety and having our chief say, the self-evaluation tool, I think is extremely important. And it's a great way to really have a discussion. So I do believe that for the manager and the clerk, we should move to a self-evaluation. That way, I think at some points, there has been felt that the evaluation is almost like it could be an attack or whatever. So I think the self-evaluation sort of calms that down a little bit, so that they can self-evaluate, and then we can come in with the, and compare the evaluations, right? And have a discussion. And we have to have that discussion. It's very important that we have it in a public forum, because it's the only way that we will know, the council, how we feel, because these are the only positions that we have the right to move forward with or remove. So those are my thoughts in regards to the evaluations after I sent the documents. I slept on it. It was after the public safety and the chief mentioning that everyone's up to date with their evaluations. Why not do it across the board? Why not do the self-evaluations and then, incorporate that into the council? And then she could use that same template that I forwarded. And then, then we can have a discussion. And then clearly we need to look at maybe with our account, if the CPA could look at what the differences would be between 5 and 8%. And I mean, that's where I stand.
Yeah, I'm gonna come to you 1 second, Councilperson Urbán. Thank you, Councilperson Roman. I'm with you 100%. I think that when I got the evaluation and I printed it out, and I actually started going through it, I think that two separate things are going on, because she hasn't gotten any type of raise. So there's certain monies that I feel like she's due. You know, just like it's just like common courtesy, like she's due, like we promised she's due. I don't think that the evaluation should necessarily be in tune with that, right? Because if she was due a certain raise, like every, at a certain time period, then that was gonna come regardless.
Well,
So,
may I?
yeah,
Because you don't give someone a raise if they don't, so that 5%, if she wouldn't have been doing a good job,
yeah,
she wouldn't have gotten that.
yeah, but the 2%.
But the 2% or,
See what I'm saying?
yeah,
So
the
that's what I'm
2%
saying.
is
So
a
it's two
different
separate
story.
things
Yeah,
going on. So I think going into this next committee meeting where we'll really lash this out, is we should kind of keep in the back of our minds that with the evaluation, with her self-evaluation and things like that, in my opinion, I'm not saying I'm not forcing everybody to think my way, but in my opinion, we're going to be debating over a certain percentage, because in my opinion, there's a certain percentage that she should receive regardless of the evaluations. So that's where I stand with that. Councilperson Irwin.
Sorry for yawning. Okay. No, I certainly agree with self-evaluation being a good, healthy part of that process, and for all the reasons that Councilperson Roman pointed out. I said at the last meeting, I think I fully support helping staff keep pace with inflation. So in terms of that cost of living raise, I'm for that. And then back to the consistency issue across the board for all salaried staff. The same process essentially should be in place. And so I think sounds like we're on the same page here in terms of what we'll be discussing at the next meeting. So.
Sounds good. So we're going to.
And I'll be up to speed at the point.
Yeah,
So.
for sure. Thank you, Councilperson Urban.
So what's the direction?
So at the next Administration Finance Committee meeting, she'll have the self-evaluation done. We'll have all of our documents and questions ready to go. And at that meeting, we're going to decide, based off our discussion and evaluation, how much of a raise, if any, that she gets outside of the, what would it be? The what would it be, two?
But I do, because we do need to discuss this with the CPA.
No, we're
We need to look at
yeah.
the numbers.
Yeah, no, so
Because
we're
like
gonna,
I said, we could say that she's definitely
Yeah.
8%.
And that we're talking about enacting this for
Right.
any salaried staff.
yeah,
So there's additional consequences there too. So which
yeah. No, we're going to have, because I'm going to be meeting with the CPA, like we meet, we're going to be meeting. So all that information, so that's basically, so all of that's coming back to this. That's why I said it's going to be kind of like a manager salary workshop. Like we're going to have all that information in front of us, and we're just going to, go at it what we agreed. We're just going to go at it for everything. We'll have all the information that we need in front of us. That's my goal for the
Okay.
next.
So, and
yeah,
I know
no, for
it's not
sure.
part of the
For sure.
G whatever.
Yeah.
We have pending, and I have to raise it. The November, Eunice, our clerk, just had an anniversary. So if we're talking about consistency,
So that's the next
Okay.
item.
Oh,
I have that there.
it's a job description, so I didn't think it
because
was.
that's the only one I was gonna.
Oh,
talk
okay,
about.
okay, sorry, I didn't know.
No, we're good.
Okay.
We're good. No, you brought up a great point.
Okay.
Hey, we're right here. Sis.
Okay.
We're on the same page. All right. So at the next, we'll have everything. Myself, the manager, the CFO. We'll have everything ready to go with that, and we'll all have our package ready to go to talk about everything next committee meeting.
And Christia, you have the document?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councilperson Rome, you have anything left you want to say on that?
Nope.
Before we move on? Councilperson Urban? Miss Manager? Mr. Attorney?
No, sir.
All right. So we're going to move on to the last thing before the tracking report. You're like, are we going to do the tracking report? We're going to move on to the last thing. So so the discussion of job description. So in this, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because, thanks to Councilperson Roman and with her, wanting to be consistent the job description of the clerk comes up, and so it's come up with the clerk with like the evaluation and things like that. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, so we have to evaluate the clerk. We need to stay consistent, as Councilperson Roman has said. And I was like, well, what are we evaluating? Because we need the job description. Like, we need to know what we're evaluating. And so
So.
so
Okay.
there's one thing that I was thinking. So I was like, okay, we have job
So
descriptions.
We have an old, so let me just clarify.
Yeah.
We have an old job description for the clerk. But what we're looking at is, because we've discussed in this meeting of, we need a full-time clerk.
Yeah.
And that position is part-time right now.
Right.
Although she's basically getting a full-time salary because she's putting in overtime and, and whatever. So we need to have a full-time clerk. Like the village, with the amount of work that we have, the amount of things, and her getting here at 2:00 in the afternoon is not, that just doesn't, we need someone here 9 to 5 or whatever our hours are. And so that's where that new job description comes in, because the job description that's current, it's a part-time job description. It's not a job description for a full-time clerk. And we need to look at moving that position, and we said we would do it for this year, or last year, or whatever it
Yeah.
was. We need to move that. That is like super important for us to move that position to a full-time.
Let me ask this, because I remember my memory. I remember when we had previous clerks. I remember we had a long-time clerk when I came in. Her name was Alberta Patterson, Bertie Patterson, and I could have sworn this came up one time when I was a newly elected council person, and I could have sworn somebody saying about the job description for the clerk is like in the code or charter, something like that. It's just charter. Is it?
So at the last meeting I was looking through Municode,
Yeah.
and I found a fairly extensive job description for a couple of the other positions. However, the clerk's job description in the charter was like,
Zip.
right, almost, yeah.
Okay, all right. So that's
Right.
okay.
And so, I'll look again, but I didn't.
No, there's no.
You're right.
You're right.
Okay. So, but is it a job description within the charter that we're discussing here, or is it
No,
just?
this is a
okay.
job description, so we updated before you got here. We updated, all of the job descriptions for the village. So the
Okay.
manager has updated, so she's got a handbook. We didn't
Okay.
have a handbook, we didn't
Okay.
have an employee handbook before. That
Okay.
employee handbook has all of the job descriptions, and the manager's job description's in there because she's an employee. And so the clerk's job description is the only job description that's missing from there,
Okay,
because we had updated.
but it's like an outdated.
It's an outdated, what we have is, so when she first got hired, and I wasn't here, but from what I heard, it was like a part-time position. It wasn't, and so, and this was a few years ago. So we're moving, and we've discussed it at this meeting, and I don't know when, that we all would like to move that to a full-time position,
Yeah.
because that's what the village
No,
requires.
people are shocked, because different people say, oh, the clerk, and I'm like, well, it's a part-time position, and people are very confused why that, of all positions, would be a part-time
Right.
position.
And
Because,
so there's a lot
Yeah.
of duties that the clerk, so what I did was that I grabbed job descriptions from different municipalities.
okay,
And I grabbed ours. And most of what was missing from ours is because a part-time clerk doesn't have time. So at this moment in time, there's so much more that she could be doing, but we can't ask her to do it because she's not here. Or, she's not available. So, so there's two things with that position is, one, bringing it to a full-time, and what does that look like, right? And then, number two is finalizing a job description for that full-time position. And then number three is getting her up to date, just so that we can be consistent with her self-evaluations now as we're moving forward. And then, an annual 3%, because she received a very significant raise 2 years ago, I believe, or a year ago. Because
she hadn't received any increases. So that increase actually puts her at the time, now she's a certified clerk. But at the time, she wasn't a certified clerk. So when the council voted to give her that increase, put her at over a certified clerk. And that was a whole discussion that was here. It was a meeting that could be pulled up. But that's just to give you a little history. So now it's just a matter of being consistent so that everybody gets their 3%, and it's not like favoritism. You know, we don't want to show favoritism, because that wouldn't be right. And then number 2 is getting that full-time. Number 3 is job description.
Okay, so as far as the job description thing goes, we need to, and I hate talking about people when they're not here, because I always want people to be able to say, their piece. So with the job description, what we need to do,
So we're not talking about the person.
No.
Yeah, so it's not with the person.
Yeah, no,
we're talking about the position.
Yeah, we're talking about the position. But I would like to look at her and be like, okay, like, let me know, like everything that you do, on a daily basis, like, what time she get, and things like, like
What
how
time
does
does
her,
she? What are her hours? Does anybody know here?
and so that's what that'd be a question we'd be able to ask her. You see what I'm saying? So
Right.
so that's why I don't like to talk about, we're not talking about her, but I don't like to discuss people when they're not here to defend and talk about themselves. So this is what we need to do. What we can do to start this process is we should, because the job description,
So you all
Yeah.
have my
yeah,
input on the job description.
yeah.
So I can
So we need to get that job description.
forward it. I'm pretty sure, because I save all my documents. I'm pretty sure I have the current what we currently have for the clerk, and then I have the additions, which weren't really, in reality, there wasn't that much, but
Councilperson
the
Romero,
additions.
if we can get those,
Yeah.
and so we'll bring those, Councilperson Urban.
Oh, and the other thing, I'm sorry, so
No,
there
go
is another thing. I've been asking since I got elected for her contract, and we don't have her contract on file. Now, I was told that she had a copy, but I've asked for it and I've never received it.
Okay, I'll ask for that. Okay, so I'll ask her for a contract. So what we need to do to start the process is we need to, Councilperson Roma, if you can send, either to the clerk or whatever, send the job description documents that you have.
Yes.
To us, we can start to go over those, and then what we're gonna do next committee meeting, we're gonna have the packet about the manager. What we're gonna do next committee meeting, we're gonna start the process about the clerk. So what we're gonna do next committee meeting is we're gonna come in having read the job description and we can go and find other job descriptions, and we can say, well, you know what, like, we think our clerk should be doing more because,
Well, I can give you
over
all of
here-
them, because I have them.
Yeah, if you can give us, give us all, or we could say, you know what, like, we don't think this is right for the clerk to be doing. We can do that. We can go through it, and we can see if we agree with the job descriptions in total. If there's anything we want to add to it, we might want to add, be like, oh, you know what, she should also do this. And she'll be here, so we could be like, hey, this, and she's like, oh, well, I also do this. We're like, oh, that's right, we could add, she also does that. So
Like,
it might
for
be
instance,
things
like,
that,
I think events weren't on there, but for a municipality of our size, she's our event person, the person so that was something that I had added. I mean, that's just something
Yeah.
off the top of my head.
So
that
see things like that,
yeah.
right? And so we'll do things like that and discuss things like that, and and be able to go back and forth about that. So next meeting we're going to start the process of fixating the job description for the clerk. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. All right. Are there any other job? That was the main one I had in my mind. But are there any other job descriptions that we want to discuss right now? Any questions about any other ones? Any staff members? Maybe Madam Manager or anything?
No, there's nothing else that's pressing.
And we have the handbook that was passed through committee, but we've never brought it to council.
No.
Let's put that on the next council. Why are we? What are you waiting for?
We can. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
we already passed, we passed it through committee a long time ago, Councilperson
Well,
Urban.
then we should
We
push
need to
it through
put
to
that,
a
we're gonna
full
put that on the
committee.
council.
Council.
We moving, people, let's move, we're moving.
Let's move it.
Nothing holding us back.
Well, you want us to forward it,
Yes, make sure we forward that to,
you want to forward
To
it now to
everybody.
council, or?
yeah, we need to forward it out
Okay,
to council.
I will do
yes,
that.
I mean, it's been
yes.
approved by the committees.
Yeah, it's been approved by the
Okay.
committee, so we need the whole council to receive that.
Very good. I'll
Definitely.
make sure that
Before
happens.
they-
And
yeah,
then the only other thing, because I know that we talked about, since you asked about other job descriptions.
No,
Maybe having another public works person in the future, so maybe.
Yes.
That's a job description that you do want to work on.
It is. In fact, I have worked on it, but I know that also comes in line with the development
Right.
fees that we are
Right.
expecting. And so I know that's going to be a whole workup that I want to work out with you all when we, so that's the list of, that's
Okay,
on the
perfect.
list.
Just-
all right, perfect, ladies and gentlemen, perfect. Okay, so for the next thing, the tracking report, so for consistency, which I said this before, after me and Councilperson Roman went back and forth that one council meeting, that one committee meeting, I said that I was going to go off of her tracking report. That's my fault. I didn't tell the clerk to send you guys that one. So she sent the old one. I forwarded to you though. So the one that you were using, I forwarded to I think the manager also, and I forwarded it to Councilperson Urban, like while we were here. So so that'll be the one that we'll use.
Okay.
From now on, I'll go. So what I'm going to do is. We won't go through item by item this time. So what I'm going to do is, so the next one, I'll have it printed out, or for everybody, I'll have the clerk send it, I'll have it printed out for everybody, and, because I have it here on my computer right now, and Urban has it on his
I
computer.
mean, I think we covered most of
Yeah, we covered
everything that's on
mostly
the tracking
everything,
report. The
and-
only thing is that, because we're not meeting all the time, is that the budget workshop, we gotta make sure,
The
it'll
dates,
be here
yeah.
before we know it, that we set dates for
Yeah, we
the
set dates,
budget
we set
workshops.
dates for that. So we just need to do that. Let me pull it up real quick, actually. I have your thing right here, Councilperson. So. Yeah, because I don't think there's anything else that we really have to, you have it right there, right, Councilperson?
I have the old one.
Go,
Yeah.
yours, right? The
No,
one-
I don't have that one.
So I don't think there's anything else that we have to really go over.
I think we covered much,
At this
most, because a lot of it is, unless the manager wants to give us some lobbying updates.
I'm gonna, if you want me to give you some updates, I will do them quickly.
Yeah.
You're ready? The chair?
Yeah, because I know I wanted to add to I think we already have, what do we have? We have the lobbying updates, we also have the audit.
I just wanted
And we
to,
also have, it was one more thing, lobbying updates, audit, and what else we discussed in our meeting?
well, it says review of actual financials, we did that. The ethics training, that would be from the clerk to discuss with you all, and the budget hearings, about the dates.
Legal update.
Oh, legal update.
Legal update.
Oh,
We
yeah.
had a legal, we discussed that in the meeting
That would
also,
be-
legal update.
The only other thing that I see here is just a reminder, since haven't looked at it, is that, per the manager's, contract, she's to take PTO, on or before September 30th. We need to review it. If the PTO is not taken, then the council needs to elect to carry it over, unused, accrued PTO to the following year, or make a payment to the manager for the cash value. So just because we're so tight on budget and everything, I just wanna make sure that that's
Yeah.
something that we really.
Don't
aware
forget
of.
about.
Take some time off.
She's like, with everything that's going
I
on,
would
she's like.
love to, believe
She's
me.
like, I can't with
but
everything we got. All these meetings y'all have
so
meetings.
much.
I'm talking about, I come here to see, I come here all the time to see the manager, and we have meetings and the manager's like, Vice Mayor Nicholson, I gotta run to here, I got a meeting with these people. I was like, man, you're always moving. Like, she's running around. I feel so sorry for her, Madam
But that's
Manager. We
something-
appreciate it.
Yeah, that's something to look at because of budget reasons. I
Appreciate it.
don't know
Thank you.
what I did,
No, you're
but,
good.
yeah.
So Madam Manager, if you just wanna go over,
Yes.
those things, legal update, legislative update, and audit, and then whatever else.
Okay,
Councilperson,
well,
I'll confuse you.
in terms of the legislative update, it really hasn't changed from my manager's report that I delivered. about 2 weeks ago, but I can say that our lobbyists are still, very much in touch with us. We are slated, we're in week 8 or 9, I don't remember which one, but we're in week 8 or 9 in legislative session. And we are expecting to move forward. I mean, nothing's happened. No one's taken our funding away yet, and we're happy about that. So far, so good in terms of getting the funding for the traffic calming over on the west side near the school and for the 2 water projects. So that's a good sign. We're really optimistic and hopeful, and our lobbyists seem to be really optimistic as well. So we'll keep you posted on when those funds come in. Knock on wood. Let's see here. Audit. Our CFO had left. I think he'd been here all day with me in the trenches going through numbers, but we can report that we are a week in on the audit already. We started at the beginning of this month, and we've submitted. We put in some submissions already to our auditor, the Fearman group, Caballero Fearman, and we are going through a single audit this year because of the obligated funds from FEMA. Even though we didn't get them, we still have to do a single audit this year, which was $5,000 more than what we typically pay for our self-audit. And some confirmations have been provided, actuaries are on board, so we're just moving forward, but we're a week in and things are moving along appropriately. I don't expect that we're gonna have the grind that we had last year. We had such a deep dive from the auditors. It was just a random situation that they wanted so much, but this year we're moving along fine, and Mr. Wallace has brought on another staffer to assist him in providing all of the documentation needed for the audit. In terms of legal, I mean, we have our attorney here to provide legal, but I can just say that there are some other things related to like old lawsuits and just things that come in that our insurance company, Florida League of Cities, is handling, and we've had some EEOC dismissals, which has been, productive, but, things are going fine. That's it.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is the PBA filed an impasse notice with the department. So we're in that process. That was begun last week. So per the rules, by the end of the month, the parties have to select a mediator. So I'll reach out to counsel for the PBA, and the next step would be that the mediator would then, or magistrate, would then schedule a time for us to have the hearings, which is gonna require, obviously, the manager, our CFO, to participate in that process. And the impasse, just to be clear, is concerning the proposed step salary increases that we weren't able to reach a resolution on.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney. I appreciate that. Appreciate all the work both of you guys are doing with like the PBA and things like that. It's always a big discussion coming up, and we cherish our police officers. How you doing back there? Good to see you, my brother. He's like, when are you guys gonna finish? Right now. So before we adjourn, anything, Councilperson Roman, that you have left on your mind you want to say before we leave or anything?
Just a quick question, just because I could ask the manager alone, but it happens to be. Where are we with waste management RFP? Are we doing that, or are we?
We discussed that earlier.
Yes, we certainly can do it. I haven't done it yet, just because there's so many things happening and going on.
It's not a
lately.
rush, I'm just wondering what the update is on that.
There is no
Okay,
update.
all right,
No update, but we can certainly.
And then
move it.
CPA?
Same for CPA, just because we started the audit, I
Right.
didn't
No,
want to
no, no, yeah,
interrupt
yeah.
at this point, but, we
Okay.
do have 3 months more that we can extend him, so
Okay.
that's helpful.
Yeah,
Okay.
we discussed that in the
And
meeting.
he's
we
not
were like-
going to
Apply?
apply?
But he may.
Oh, he may?
He may
Oh,
apply,
okay,
yeah,
okay,
he
okay.
may apply.
Yeah, we just didn't want to interrupt. We had the meeting, and I brought those two up. I brought up waste management, and I brought up the CPA, and she
Okay.
was like, "Well, we're doing an audit. I don't want to, I just want to get through. We have a lot of,
Okay, I was just.
So, yeah,
'cause,
no, but thank you.
Sometimes training and.
No, thank you. I mean, I appreciate that, because that goes with what we just decided we're changing, right? We're not gonna just, we're gonna stick to these, we're not gonna just let things just lay out there, interim forever and, RFP forever, and, we're gonna stick to these things and kind of attack these things, which is wonderful. Councilperson Urban, anything before we leave?
Motion to adjourn.
Councilperson, Manager, Madam Manager, anything before we leave? Okay, and Mr. Attorney, anything before we leave?
All in favor, say aye.
Okay, so we have a motion to adjourn by Councilperson Urban. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Councilperson Roman. All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. The Administration and Finance Committee meeting for Tuesday, March 10th is adjourned at 12:27 a.m. For Wednesday, March 11th, 12:27 a.m. That is.